Chapter 191. However, Nietion's patience did not appease these warriors. Instead, it made them even more arrogant. A pile of dog sh*t. If you have the guts, come and hit me. A handsome young martial artist raised the long whip in his hand high up in the air and said in an arrogant manner. Nietion's face darkened. Then he smiled playfully and said, I've seen idiots, but I've never seen an idiot as arrogant as you. Stinking brat, you're courting death. The young warrior was very arrogant. Hearing Nietion call him an idiot, he directly raised the long whip in his hand. Nietion did not have the slightest reaction, but Xiao Shan, who was beside him, was ready. As long as this person's whip fell, his head would be separated from his body. Stop! At this moment, a middle-aged martial artist poked his head out of the carriage and roared loudly. Immediately, an air-breaking force swept past and stopped the young martial artist. Father! The young warrior turned around and looked at his father with a puzzled expression. He did not know that if it was not his father but Xiao Shan, he would already be a corpse. Shut up! The middle-aged warrior walked out of the carriage and glared at his son. Immediately, he smiled at Nietion and said, Young master, my son was reckless and offended you. I apologize on his behalf. Please forgive me. Nietion saw that this person was still polite and did not want to cause more trouble. He smiled faintly and waved his hand, saying, It's okay. Father. The young warrior still wanted to say something. He looked at his father as if he did not understand why he was so polite to Nietion. Bastard! Get out of here! The middle-aged warrior glared at his son. Even though the latter was angry, he could only ride his horse and leave. I'll take my leave. The middle-aged warrior nodded slightly and went back into the carriage. The small disturbance ended just like that. The long convoy of carriages took a long time to pass, stirring up a cloud of dust on the road. Nietion watched the convoy gradually disappear. He had a strange feeling in his heart, as if he had missed something. Boss, did something happen in Tianluo City? Jean de Bao asked as he rode his horse over. Huh? Nietion was slightly taken aback. He did not quite understand what Jean de Bao meant. Jean de Bao chuckled and said, Why do I feel like this fleet of carriages is like a large clan fleeing for their lives? Big carts and small carts, transporting away all their savings. Nietion nodded with a smile. From Jean de Bao's words, this group of carriages did indeed look like they were fleeing for their lives. The owner of this caravan should be someone from the royal family of Blue Cloud. He wouldn't be fleeing, Xiao Shan suddenly said with a smile. Someone from the royal family? Nietion was surprised and asked, How do you know? Their carriages are flying the golden dragon flag. Doesn't that mean they're from the royal family? Xiao Shan asked. Sigh, it seems like it really is the golden dragon flag. Could that guy be Lan Bingqian's imperial uncle? Jean de Bao laughed mischievously and said, he still remembered that Lan Bingqian once told Nietion that the current city lord of Tianluo City was his uncle, Lan Yunjiang. Moreover, Lan Bingqian had informed Lan Yunjiang in advance to leave the city lord's mansion for Nietion. Nietion's expression changed when he heard Xiao Shan and Jean de Bao's words. He immediately roared, Xiao Shan, go stop that fleet of carriages. Okay. Xiao Shan immediately reacted. He didn't care why Nietion did this. He directly jumped off the carriage and disappeared in a flash. When a giant spirit realm martial artist ran at full speed, even a dragon horse couldn't compare. Boss, what happened? Jean de Bao couldn't help but ask when he saw Nietion's strange expression. Nietion didn't answer him. He only said, Follow me. With these words, Nietion immediately drove the car and chased after them. Jean de Bao and Zhang Yifeng quickly followed. A few hundred meters away, the long fleet of carriages slowly moved forward. In one of the carriages, a figure poked his head out. It was the middle-aged martial artist from before. Father, why didn't you let me kill that brat? Outside the carriage, the young martial artist couldn't help but ask angrily. The middle-aged martial artist smiled coldly and said, That brat's coachman isn't simple. He seems to have condensed a saber heart. If your whip had landed, you would probably be a corpse. The young martial artist saw his father's serious expression and knew that he wasn't joking. Beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. He was shocked. The middle-aged martial artist suddenly looked back. His expression was slightly nervous. He said in his heart, "Why do I feel that Brad is strange? Could he be the Niet Tian that His Majesty mentioned in the letter?" The middle-aged martial artist mentioned Niet Tian's name. He was none other than the previous city lord of Tianluo City, Lan Bingchen's uncle, Lan Yunjiang. And that young martial artist was his son, Lan Bingchen. His Majesty warned in the letter not to offend Niet Tian. What kind of person is this Niet Tian to make His Majesty so afraid of him? Lan Yunjiang muttered, but he didn't care much. After all, he had already left Tianluo City and wouldn't have anything to do with Niet Tian anymore. Lan Bingchen suddenly smiled and said, "Father, we have plundered all the valuables in Tianluo City. The new city lord wouldn't come looking for trouble, right?" Lan Yunjiang's face darkened. He scolded, "Huar, don't talk nonsense. These valuables belong to the city lord mansion. How could they be plundered?" Yes, father is right. I misspoke." Lan Bingchen quickly smiled, but his face was full of pride. It turned out that these dozens of carriages were the wealth of the people that Lan Yunjiang had plundered in Tianluo City for decades. Of course, he had to take them with him when he left Tianluo City. What's more, he even took away everything in the city lord mansion's treasury. He didn't leave anything for Niet Tian. Let the carriages speed up. We can only be at ease if we reach Lan Yunjiang as soon as possible." Lan Yunjiang said, and his head shrunk into the carriage. The carriages in front stopped. However, at this moment, an explosive shout suddenly rang out. The guards of the carriages reacted and turned around, only to see a figure rushing over like a galloping beast. Qiu Shan's figure leaped and directly arrived at the front of the carriages, blocking the carriages. "Who dares?" One of the guards of the carriages saw that someone was blocking the road and shouted. But before he could finish speaking, he was so shocked that he stopped abruptly. Bang! Suddenly, Edgeless Desert Blade appeared behind Qiu Shan, and he slashed towards a 100 meters tall tree that was tens of meters away. With just one slash, the 100 meters tall tree was actually chopped in half. A huge rumbling sound rang out, and dust flew up from the ground. All of the guards widened their eyes and looked at Qiu Shan. They simply didn't dare to believe their eyes, and their eyes were filled with fear. This move of Qiu Shan's was very effective. The guards of the carriages were all scared stiff, and the entire carriages were successfully stopped by him. When Lan Bingchen, who was in the middle of the carriages, saw this scene, his small face became deathly white. Chapter 192. The caravan was stopped by someone. Lan Yunjiang hurriedly walked out of the carriage. Seeing that it was Qiu Shan, he smiled apologetically and said, "Mister, this old man has already apologized on behalf of my son. Mister, why are you so persistent?" Qiu Shan didn't bother with him and said coldly, "Wait here. My master has something to ask you." Lan Yunjiang's heart sank. He felt that something bad was about to happen, but seeing Qiu Shan's stern expression, he didn't dare to speak again. A moment later, Niet Tian's carriage came over. "Are you in such a hurry to leave Heaven Luo City?" Lan Yunjiang. Niet Tian jumped off the carriage and looked at Lan Yunjiang with a playful expression. That's right, Niet Tian had already guessed Lan Yunjiang's identity. Fortunately, Jean de Bao and Qiu Shan reminded him in time. Jean de Bao said that Lan Yunjiang's carriage seemed to be fleeing, but Qiu Shan said that it was a royal carriage. Plus, Lan Bingchen once said that the previous city lord of Heaven Luo City was his uncle, Lan Yunjiang. Connecting these pieces of information, it wasn't hard to guess that the carriage in front of them was Lan Yunjiang's. Niet Tian also guessed that the wealth of this caravan belonged to the people of Heaven Luo City that Lan Yunjiang had plundered. Being called out by Niet Tian, Lan Yunjiang's heart sank, but he still maintained a calm expression and smiled. "Mister, do you know this old man?" What a cunning old fox, still playing dumb at this moment. Niet Tian smiled faintly and said, "It's fine if you don't know me. You just need to know this." Saying so, Niet Tian took out the city lord seal that Lan Bingchen gave him. This brat really is Niet Tian. Lan Yunjiang's heart skipped a beat when he saw the city lord seal. His expression also changed, but he quickly returned to normal and smiled apologetically. So, it's Mr. Nietion. His Majesty has already informed this old man. This old man will leave Heaven Luo City now. From now on, Heaven Luo City belongs to Mr. Nietion. Lan Bingchen had specifically warned Lan Yunjiang not to offend Nietion. Lan Yunjiang didn't know why Lan Bingchen, as the Emperor of Blue Cloud, would be so afraid of the city lord, but seeing how ruthless Qiu Shan was, he knew that Nietion wasn't someone to be trifled with. Nietion glanced at Lan Yunjiang, and then his gaze swept over the dozens of carriages. With a meaningful smile, he said, Lan Yunjiang, you took so many treasures with you. Are you going to leave me with nothing in the city governor's mansion? Although Nietion's gaze only swept past him, Lan Yunjiang was already drenched in cold sweat from fright. He didn't dare to look at Nietion directly. Before Lan Yunjiang could speak, Lan Binghua, who was behind him, spoke first. Nietion, how dare you? Do you know who my father is? At this time, Lan Binghua still didn't understand the situation at all. He roared, my father is the uncle of the current emperor. How many lives do you have to talk to my father like this? Nietion frowned slightly. He didn't even have the interest to watch Lan Binghua. This guy was too stupid. Nietion didn't want to talk to him at all. Using Lan Bingchen to threaten Nietion was as stupid as being born in the womb. Even if Lan Bingchen was here, he wouldn't dare to disobey Nietion in the slightest. You're courting death. At this time, Qiu Shan's figure moved. In the air, a blade aura broke through the air and attacked Lan Binghua. Bang! With a muffled sound, Lan Binghua was directly sent flying. After landing, he spat out a mouthful of blood. His face immediately showed an abnormal expression of pain. Hua, are you okay? Lan Yunjiang suddenly turned around, and, at the same time, his expression changed. Lan Binghua's expression was aghast. After a while, he reacted and wailed in pain. Father, my vital meridians have been destroyed. The group of guards looked at Qiu Shan in unison, their faces filled with unconcealable fear. Lan Binghua was also a fifth-tier all-manifestation martial artist, but his vital meridians were actually destroyed by a casual blade aura from Qiu Shan. How powerful was Qiu Shan's strength? He should be at the giant spirit realm at the very least. Nietion, what is the meaning of this? Lan Yunjiang asked the guards behind him to help Lan Binghua up. He looked at Nietion with a gloomy expression. After seeing his son crippled with his own eyes, if Lan Yunjiang didn't have the slightest bit of rationality left, he would have already pounced on Nietion and risked his life. Nietion smiled faintly and said, just now, I was just teaching your son a lesson. If it wasn't for Lan Bingchen, he would have died a long time ago. People like Lan Binghua were used to being arrogant and wanted to kill at the slightest provocation. Just now, Nietion had only said one sentence to him, and he wanted to kill. With such a ruthless and bloodthirsty temperament, destroying his vital meridians was already the lightest punishment. When Lan Yunjiang saw Nietion's calm expression, he couldn't help but feel a little guilty. Nietion actually called Lan Bingchen by his name. From this, it could be seen that he didn't care about the latter at all. Lan Yunjiang was an old fox and very shrewd. At a time like this, he actually suppressed the anger in his heart and said, "You've already vented my anger by crippling my son. This old man will take his leave." Take his leave? Nietion couldn't help but laugh. This old fox really knew how to act. He actually wanted to just leave. If Nietion only wanted to vent his anger on Lan Binghua, he would have done so earlier. Why did he have to go through so much trouble to stop the convoy? Jean de Bayeux chuckled and said, "Old fox, you really know how to joke. Could it be that my boss went through so much trouble to stop your convoy just to vent his anger on that useless son of yours? Don't fucking play dumb. These dozens of carriages are all Heaven Luo City's property. Don't even think about taking any of it away." Of course, Jean de Bayeux wasn't stupid. He had already figured out what was going on. Lan Yunjiang was really black-hearted. Even Jean de Bayeux, the son of the richest man in the imperial city, was shocked by these dozens of carriages. Jean de Bao didn't know that these were the property that Lan Yunjiang had plundered for decades as the city lord. This time, when he returned to Blue Cloud City, he wanted to take it all away. He didn't expect to meet Nie Tian on the way. "This is my personal property. Why can't I take it away?" Lan Yunjiang roared and subconsciously took a step forward. "Personal property?" Nie Tianling sneered. Was Lan Yunjiang lying to a ghost? How could a small city lord have so many personal property? Even a 3-year-old child wouldn't believe him. Nie Tian didn't waste time with Lan Yunjiang and said, "I don't care what kind of property it is. In any case, it was taken from Heaven Luo City. Now we have to take it back to Heaven Luo City. Anyone who wants to stop us will be killed without mercy." "Nie Tian, you dare?" Lan Yunjiang was forced into a corner. This was his accumulation for decades. How could he just let someone snatch it away? "You can try." Nie Tian smiled sinisterly. If Lan Yunjiang dared to make any strange moves, Nie Tian didn't mind sending him on his way. He didn't care if the latter was an imperial uncle or not. Nie Tian nodded at Xiu Shan. The latter understood and shouted, "Everyone listen up. Turn around immediately and return to Heaven Luo City." His thunderous voice resounded in everyone's heart. The group of guards subconsciously glanced at Blue Ice transformation. Then, they moved and began to slowly turn the carriages around. Xiu Shan dared to destroy Blue Ice transformation, let alone others. Chapter 193. Lan Yunjiang was very cunning, and he suddenly attacked Nie Tian. Xiu Shan was too strong, and Lan Yunjiang couldn't afford to provoke him. However, Nie Tian was only at the first level of the All Creations realm. Once he controlled Nie Tian, Xiu Shan naturally wouldn't dare to act rashly. Lan Yunjiang was at the 9th level of the All Creations realm, and he was very confident that he could control Nie Tian in an instant. However, he was completely wrong. Although Nie Tian was only at the first level of the All Creations realm, his true battle strength far surpassed that of the first level of the All Creations realm. Unless it was a giant spirit realm martial artist, there were very few martial artists who could fight against Nie Tian head-on. Boom! Lan Yunjiang's 5 fingers formed a claw, and a sharp claw shadow attacked Nie Tian's neck in the air. Nie Tian didn't panic and directly punched out. In the next moment, Lan Yunjiang felt a huge force, and his body sank. He flew out and smashed heavily on the ground. "This!" Everyone gasped and stared at Nie Tian with their eyes wide open, unable to believe the scene in front of them. If they hadn't seen it with their own eyes, who would believe that a first level of the All Creations realm martial artist could casually send a 9th level martial artist flying with a punch? Lan Yunjiang sprang to his feet and stared at Nie Tian in disbelief. He never thought that he would be sent flying by a first level of the All Creations realm martial artist. "What the hell? Nie Tian, I'm the Emperor's uncle. How dare you hit me? Do you still have His Majesty in your eyes?" Lan Yunjiang shouted after calming down. Nie Tianling smiled coldly and said, "Go back and ask Lan Bingchen. Even if I have him in my eyes, would he dare to stand in front of me?" "You." Lan Yunjiang's face froze. He couldn't help but shiver, and he couldn't say anything. "Get lost." Nie Tian didn't want to talk nonsense with him anymore and shouted in a deep voice. Lan Yunjiang looked at Nie Tian with hatred, and he seemed to be hesitating. "My master told you to get lost. Didn't you hear him?" Xiu Shan's deep voice rang out. At the same time, a huge, edgeless broadsword that was dozens of meters long appeared behind him. Giant Spirit Realm. Lan Yunjiang's face paled. He immediately recognized that the blade on Xiu Shan's back was the giant spirit true body. The other warriors all felt a chill run down their spines. They rejoiced in their hearts that they hadn't attacked Xiu Shan. Previously, these guards had looked down on Xiu Shan and the others, calling them country bumpkins. But who would have thought that these country bumpkins were actually giant spirit realm martial practitioners? Lan Yunjiang's expression was complicated and resentful. Looking at Xiu Shan's giant spirit avatar, he no longer had the slightest intention to resist. He knew that he wasn't Xiu Shan's match, so he could only grit his teeth and sigh before leaving with Lan Bing. "Nie Tian, when I return to Blue Cloud City, I must personally ask His Majesty who you are. Lan Yunjiang said to himself as he left. How can Yetian not know what this old fox was thinking? However, the answer he got from Lan Bingchen would only make him more shocked. Lan Yunjiang's father and son limped away, cutting a sorry figure. Nie Tian looked at the convoy in front of him and could not help being surprised in his heart. There are 4 to 5 large chests in each carriage. Even if the chests are all filled with gold coins, this money must be at least in the hundreds of millions. Inside these chests were clearly not just gold coins. There were definitely also essence crystals, medicinal herbs, spirit weapons, and other precious treasures and the like. One had to admit that Nie Tian really struck it rich this time. With this huge sum of money, Nie Tian could do many things. You're all Heaven Luo City's guards, right? Nie Tian swept his gaze over all the guards and asked in a loud voice. This convoy was filled with valuables and no family members. Presumably, Lan Yunjiang already let his family members leave in advance. Replying to City Lord, this lowly one is Heaven Luo City's guard deputy commander, Gao Han. We're all Heaven Luo City's guards. One of the martial artists stepped forward and said with a bow, Gao Han. Nie Tian nodded slightly. He scanned Gao Han with his divine sense and discovered that he was at the 9th level of the all-creation realm, which was not bad. Nie Tian then asked, Where's your commander? City Lord the commander. Gao Han hesitated for a moment, but still said, Lan Binghua, who was crippled just now, is our commander. Nie Tian was slightly stunned. Lan Binghua, who was crippled by Qiushan just now, was only at the 5th level of the all-creation realm, while Gao Han was at the 9th level of the all-creation realm. However, Lan Binghua was actually a guard commander, while Gao Han was only a deputy commander. This made people feel strange. These two people's positions should be swapped. However, Nie Tian suddenly thought of Lan Binghua's identity and immediately understood. He was the city lord's son. Even if his strength was not good, being a guard commander was nothing. Very good. Nie Tian nodded with a smile and said, I'm the new city lord of Heaven Luo City, Nie Tian. From now on, all of you will be loyal to me. Your subordinate pays respect to the city lord. Gao Han knelt on one knee and said loudly, Your subordinate pays respect to the city lord. Gao Han bowed to Nie Tian. The other guards didn't dare to be negligent and knelt down together, looking rather imposing. These guard strengths were all between the 5th and 9th level of the all-creation realm. With Qiushan around, how would they dare to disobey Nie Tian? Moreover, Nie Tian had the city lord seal in his hands, so he was the city lord to begin with. Nie Tian let these people stand up, then said to Qiushan, Qiushan, I'll leave these people to you. From now on, you'll be the guard commander of Heaven Luo City. Yes, Qiushan replied respectfully. Your subordinate pays respect to the Lord Commander. Gao Han hurriedly bowed to Qiushan. Qiushan nodded and said in a deep voice, Everyone, listen up. Return to Heaven Luo City immediately. Yes. All the martial artists answered and began to get busy. The huge convoy started moving slowly. Heaven Luo City was already right in front of them. As long as they passed through Heaven Luo Mountain, they would be able to reach it. However, it was already nighttime and the sky was getting dark. The mountain range was covered in trees and spirit beasts ran amok, so there might be danger. Gao Han rode his horse forward, walked to Nie Tian's side, and said, City Lord, it's getting late, and Heaven Luo Mountain is extremely dangerous. Why don't we wait until tomorrow morning to cross the mountain? After seeing Nie Tian's methods, Gao Han had already acknowledged Nie Tian's identity as the city lord. Nie Tian looked at the dark Heaven Luo Mountain and said disapprovingly, Heaven Luo Mountain isn't big, and the spirit beasts inside are at most rank 3. There shouldn't be any danger. The Heaven Luo Mountain in front of them had a circumference of less than 50 kilometers, so there definitely wouldn't be any high-rank spirit beasts inside. Even if there was danger, it wasn't within Nie Tian's scope of consideration. Gao Han suddenly looked awkward. He hesitated for a moment, but he still said, City Lord, you've just arrived at Heaven Luo City, so you might not know this, but there's a group of fierce bandits living on Heaven Luo Mountain. They specialize in robbing passers-by's belongings. If we cross the mountain with great fanfare at this time, we'll definitely alarm them. I'm afraid there will be some trouble then. Fierce bandits? The corner of Nietion's mouth curled up, and he asked in a deep voice, "Since you know that there are fierce bandits on Heaven Luo Mountain, why aren't you exterminating them?" "City Lord, this group of fierce bandits are very strong, and they—" Gao Han's expression became even uglier, and he started to stutter. "If you have something to say, just say it." Nietion didn't want to waste time and said sternly. Gao Han didn't dare to hide anything anymore and said, "The leader of the fierce bandits and the previous city lord are sworn brothers, and every time they rob, a portion of the belongings would be given to the city lord mansion. So, Chapter 194. Nietion didn't think that Lan Yunjiang, as the lord of Tianluo City, would actually collude with bandits and engage in robbery. It had to be said that this was indeed a good way to make money. No wonder he could accumulate so much wealth. But unfortunately, all these riches were taken by Nietion. "Gao Han, how strong are the bandits of Tianluo Mountain?" Nietion originally wanted to enter the mountain directly, but he remembered that he had so many riches with him. Most importantly, Nieyuro and the others were also there, so he had to be more cautious. Gao Han bowed and replied, "This group of bandits has about 50 to 60 people. The leader is a first-level giant spirit martial artist called Peng Shi. The other bandits are all between the 5th and 9th level of the Wanxiang realm. A bandit with the strength of a giant spirit. Not simple." Nietion smiled faintly and said to Qiushan, "Let's enter the mountain." Knowing the strength of this group of bandits, Nietion didn't have anything to worry about and prepared to enter the mountain immediately. Gao Han still wanted to dissuade him, but when he saw Nietion's calm appearance, he swallowed his words. Since Nietion dared to enter the mountain, he naturally had enough confidence. This group of bandits better not appear. Otherwise, Nietion wouldn't mind directly exterminating them. A mere first-level giant spirit martial artist was nothing in Nietion's eyes. Although he was full of confidence, Nietion secretly reminded Qiushan to be careful after entering the mountain and protect Nieyuro and the others' carriages. The carriages moved forward slowly and soon entered the deep, dark mountain forest. Just as the carriages entered the mountain forest, two figures appeared again. It was Lan Yunjiang and his son. "Father, are we really going back?" Lan Binghua's little face was pale, and his eyes were filled with fear. "I'm going to see Peng Shi. We definitely can't let Nietion return to Tianluo City." Lan Yunjiang's face was sinister as he said through gritted teeth. Originally, he wanted to go back to Lan Yun City directly. However, he couldn't let go of so many treasures. Those were the things he had accumulated for decades. How could he just give them away? Lan Yunjiang said, "The carriages are moving slowly. Let's take a detour and enter the mountain. As long as we find Peng Shi, I don't believe that Nietion will be able to walk out of Tianluo Mountain alive." As he spoke, the killing intent on Lan Yunjiang's face could no longer be concealed. Two figures disappeared into the forest under the cover of the night. After entering the forest, the speed of the caravan became even slower. After all, it was already nighttime. The forest was deep and dark, and the light was very weak. Gao Han was leading the way, and Nietion was riding a horse beside him. Qiushan continued to be the coachman. According to Nietion's instructions, no matter what happened later, he would not leave the carriage. His mission was to protect Nieyuro and the others. In the forest, the light grew dimmer. The surrounding giant trees were like giant beasts lurking in the night, ready to pounce on them at any moment. The air was suffused with a murderous and strange atmosphere, causing all the cultivators to shut their mouths and remain silent. "Lord Governor, Tianluo City is not far from here. In at most an hour, we will be able to leave the mountain." Gao Han couldn't help but feel a little happy and complacent. Nietion nodded with a smile on the surface, but he didn't relax at all. He remained vigilant. Soon, the caravan arrived at a dark valley. "Stop!" Nietion vaguely heard a low voice coming from the valley. He immediately waved his hand, signaling for the caravan to stop. "Lord Governor, what's the matter?" Gao Han didn't understand and couldn't help but ask. The others also didn't know what was going on, but they all revealed nervous expressions. Nyetian smiled faintly and said in a loud voice, "After walking for so long, my brothers must be tired. Let's rest here for a while." Rest here? Gao Han was stunned. He wanted to say something, but Nyetian glared at him, and he swallowed his words. The others also had some complaints. They didn't understand why Nyetian would suddenly rest here. At this moment, they were in the middle of Tianluo Mountain, which was extremely dangerous. Why would they choose to rest here? Was there something wrong with their brains? However, Nyetian was the lord of the city, and his strength was very strange. Even if they had doubts, they didn't dare to show it. Nyetian didn't care about them. He walked over to Qiu Shan and said, "I will go to the valley in front to take a look. You stay here and protect the girls." "Sir, don't worry." Qiu Shan knew that Nyetian must have discovered something, so he nodded and agreed. Nyetian turned around and said to Gao Han, "Gao Han, follow me to the valley in front to take a look." Yes. Even though Gao Han had doubts, he didn't dare to disobey Nyetian. Moreover, he also wanted to see what tricks this new lord of the city was playing. Nyetian just smiled faintly, jumped off the horse, and walked forward. When they arrived at the entrance of the valley, Nyetian spread out his spiritual force. At this moment, his perception was raised to the extreme. At this time, Nyetian's spiritual force had reached the 42nd level, slightly higher than before. Even in this deep valley, he could see the wind blowing and grass moving within a kilometer. He just heard a faint whisper. Although it wasn't loud, he was sure it was an illusion. Other warriors, including Qiu Shan, couldn't possibly detect such a slight movement. "HM?" After a moment, Nyetian suddenly frowned and let out a low cry. There seemed to be a convoy in the valley, and it stopped as if it had encountered some obstacle. "Lord, what's wrong?" Gao Han saw that Nyetian's expression was strange and couldn't help but become nervous. Nyetian signaled Gao Han to not make a sound. Then, he pointed with his finger and entered the valley. Gao Han followed closely beside Nyetian, his nerves stretched taut, not daring to be careless. The two of them entered the valley, and a moment later, they saw a convoy stop in the middle of the valley. Looking at the exit in front of them, it was actually blocked by a huge rock. From afar, Nyetian saw a flag fluttering in the middle of the convoy. On it were the two words "in," so he asked, "Gao Han, do you know who this convoy belongs to?" Gao Han's face was filled with shock. He looked suspiciously at Nyetian, as if asking, "How did you know there were people in the valley?" Gao Han reacted, and when he saw the flag, his expression changed, and he said in shock, "This is the Dayuan Chamber of Commerce's convoy." Dayuan Chamber of Commerce? Nyetian was slightly taken aback, not understanding why Gao Han would be so frightened. Gao Han hurriedly said, "Lord, the Dayuan Chamber of Commerce is one of the 7 top chambers of the 3,000 Small Worlds Martial Commerce Union. Its power is comparable to a first-rate empire. A top chamber of commerce in the Martial Commerce Union. It was no wonder that Gao Han was so frightened. Nyetian had heard Jin Mingxin mention the Martial Commerce Union before, an enormous organization comparable to the Alchemist Guild. The Blue Cloud Chamber of Commerce was a small branch of the Martial Commerce Union, but compared to the Dayuan Chamber of Commerce, it was far inferior. The Dayuan Chamber of Commerce was one of the 7 top chambers of commerce in the Martial Commerce Union, and its power far surpassed the average second-rate empire, even comparable to a first-rate empire. Chapter 195. Nyetian released his mental energy and divine sense, only to discover that there were no experts in the convoy. The strongest person was only a martial artist at the 9th level of the Wanxiang realm. The rest were all around the 5th level of the Wanxiang realm. This kind of strength doesn't match the Dayuan Chamber of Commerce's name. Nyetian was puzzled. "City Lord, let's hurry over and see what's going on." Gao Han was very nervous and wanted to go over, but he was stopped by Nyetian. Gao Han looked at Nyetian suspiciously and said, "City Lord, the Dayuan Chamber of Commerce cannot afford to offend us. If something happens to their convoy in Tianluo Mountain, our Tianluo city will not be able to escape responsibility. Don't worry." Nyetian pointed above the valley with a calm expression. He had already discovered that the real danger did not come from the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce, but was hidden above the valley. Gao Han immediately understood and said with a horrified expression, "City Lord, could it be that someone wants to ambush the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce?" Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Just when Gao Han's words had yet to finish, a sharp whistling sound suddenly rang out. In the air, fire arrows were like rain, drawing countless lines of fire in the air. Without warning, they shot down from above the valley, flashing across the sky and shooting towards the convoy. "There's someone above. There's a surprise attack. Be careful." F***CK. It's an armor-piercing arrow. The Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's convoy was in chaos, and panicked shouts rose and fell. However, Nie Tian was unfazed. He looked at the scene in front of him calmly, not in a hurry to show himself. Right now, the ambushers above the valley had the absolute initiative. If they rushed out immediately, they would be skinned even if they didn't die under such dense fire arrows. Seeing that Nie Tian didn't move, Gao Han naturally didn't dare to move either. He could only watch the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's people scream in pain. Just as the sneak attack began, there were still some rational people in the Chamber of Commerce who took out a flame bomb and squeezed it lightly. After an explosion, a ball of scarlet fire soared into the sky and instantly dispersed in the air. It was very dazzling. This is the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's distress signal. Gao Han was quite shocked, and beads of sweat appeared on his forehead. If something happened to the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's convoy in Tianluo Mountain, Tianluo City, and even the entire Lanyan Empire would be in trouble. Right at this moment, the fire arrow landed, and screams of pain rang out incessantly. After a short while, the fire arrows ended. The dozens of guards of the Great Yuan Chamber of Commerce had suffered heavy casualties and had practically lost all ability to resist. "Don't panic, everyone. I've already sent out a distress signal. Our people will come from Heaven Luo City as reinforcements soon." The leader of the Yuan Chamber of Commerce's convoy, Ding Xiaofeng, shouted loudly. At the same time, his gaze fell on the carriage in the middle of the convoy, and he subconsciously stood guard beside it. Reinforcement? Ding Xiaofeng's words had just sounded when a ferocious and wild laughter immediately sounded. Immediately, dozens of black, clothed figures leaped down from above the valley. "Are you still waiting for reinforcements to arrive?" The leader of the black-robed men smiled coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent. Ding Xiaofeng looked at the black, clothed men in front of him and was actually still able to maintain his calm. Stepping forward, he cupped his hands and said, "Friends, we are the Yuan Merchant Association. Kill them. Leave no one alive." Before Ding Xiaofeng could finish his words, the leader of the black-clothed men roared. Yes, the dozens of black-clothed men roared in unison, and in the next moment, they charged towards the convoy. The dozens of black-clothed men attacked at the same time. Ding Xiaofeng was so scared that his face turned pale. As he retreated, his eyes were filled with despair. The strength of these black-clothed men was very strong. None of them were weaker than him, and the leader was even more valiant. He seemed to already have the strength of a giant spirit realm. Right at this moment, a sudden change occurred. 300 billion sword shadows. Nie Tian roared loudly. Without hesitation, the Heaven Slash sword let out a cold sword cry. Immediately after, dozens of sword shadows whizzed out and attacked the black-clothed men. Bang, bang, bang. A series of explosions sounded. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, the black-clothed men were actually repelled. Seeing this, Gao Han broke out in cold sweat. Nie Tian only had the strength of a Wan Xiang first level, and the power of this sword was even comparable to a giant spirit realm martial artist. All the black-clothed men turned around at the same time. When they saw Nie Tian's face clearly, they were all shocked. They didn't expect that the one who repelled them with the sword was actually a young man. However, Nie Tian ignored them. He saw Ding Xiaofeng and the others surrounding a carriage. At first glance, there seemed to be nothing unusual on the carriage, and it was no different from the other carriages. However, Nietian could see that there was a box on the carriage, and there was actually a rank 3 restrictive spiritual formation on it. It seemed that there was something extremely valuable inside, or something very terrifying. What on earth is so important to them? Nietian frowned slightly, feeling puzzled. However, now was not the time to think about this. He had to first get rid of these troublesome black-clothed men. Stinking brat, who are you? Seeing that Nietian's strength was strange, the leader of the black-clothed men shouted loudly. There was some vigilance in his eyes. However, Nietian ignored him. Instead, he set his gaze on a black-clothed man beside him and said with a faint smile, "Lan Yunjiang, I spared your life, but I didn't expect that you would run back to die yourself. Then don't blame me." Nietian saw at a glance that the person beside the black-clothed men's leader was none other than Lan Yunjiang. He didn't expect that Lan Yunjiang would actually dare to come back. This old fellow was definitely unwilling to give away so many treasures with both hands, so he ran back on his own. Lan Yunjiang really lived up to the saying, "Humans die in pursuit of wealth, while birds die in pursuit of food." Nietian, do you think you can leave here alive? Seeing that his identity was exposed, Lan Yunjiang no longer concealed himself. He tore off his black clothes and said coldly. Originally, Lan Yunjiang wanted to wait until he dealt with the Yuan Chamber of Commerce's people before looking for Nietian. He didn't expect that Nietian would deliver himself to his doorstep. Moreover, it was only him and Gao Han. The most troublesome Qiushan wasn't here. This was really a heaven-sent opportunity. Nietian smiled faintly and said to the black-clothed men's leader, "You're Peng Shi, right?" "Huh, stinking brat. You still know this lord's great name? Then obediently accept your death." Peng Shi laughed wildly, completely disregarding Nietian. "Gao Han, aren't you going to come over?" Lan Yunjiang suddenly looked at Gao Han with a malicious gaze and shouted. Gao Han's entire body trembled. He wanted to walk over, but it was as if 10,000 tons of lead sand had been poured into his legs, causing him to be unable to move even a single step. He turned around to look at Nietian and actually felt a domineering confidence from the latter. Immediately, he steadied his heart and roared, "Lan Yunjiang, you colluded with bandits and robbed the Yuan Chamber of Commerce. Your crimes cannot be forgiven. Today, I will execute you on the spot." Lan Yunjiang was stunned, as if he didn't know Gao Han. He didn't expect that Gao Han, who was usually a yes-man to him, would suddenly become so courageous and actually dare to say such words. Nietian nodded slightly, satisfied with Gao Han's performance. Chapter 196. Humph! Peng Shi knew that his identity had been exposed and sneered. Immediately, a terrifying aura surged out as he smiled eerily. "Since you already know who I am, then all of you shall die here. With just you?" Nietian smiled faintly, his expression indifferent as if he did not care at all. Here, only Peng Shi had the strength of a level 1 spirit warrior, and only he made Nietian slightly apprehensive. The others did not pose any threat to Nietian at all. "Little bastard, this lord will tear you apart." Peng Shi roared angrily, his entire body boiling with anger. Even his hair stood up, making him look like an enraged lion. "Die for me." With a punch, Peng Shi directly attacked Nietian. A terrifying aura condensed into a golden lion claw in the air, grabbing at Nietian. "City Lord, be careful!" Gao Han cried out, fearing that something would happen to Nietian. Facing Peng Shi's fatal punch, the corners of Nietian's mouth curled into a strange smile. His feet stepped out in a strange manner, circulating all the essence energy in his body to the limit. Immediately, he stabbed out with his sword, shocking sword aura spreading several meters away. Bang! With a muffled sound, the sword aura surged and directly broke the golden lion claw, forcing Peng Shi to retreat repeatedly in a sorry state. Everyone stared wide-eyed at the scene before them in disbelief. Who would have thought that a level 1 manifestation martial artist could actually repel a level 1 spirit warrior? What a powerful sword aura! Ding Xiaofeng of the Yuan Trading Association saw some clues and had a look of shock. It turned out that Ding Xiaofeng was also a swordsman and had even nurtured a sword heart. It was precisely because of this that Ding Xiaofeng often boasted about how his sword Dao aptitude was. But now that he saw Nie Tian, he realized that his sword Dao aptitude was simply trash. Ding Xiaofeng could feel that Nie Tian's sword aura was very terrifying. Among all the swordsmen he had encountered, he had never seen such a terrifying sword aura. He even felt that Nie Tian could contend with him, a sword heart swordsman, just by relying on sword aura alone. Ding Xiaofeng still had some self-awareness. Nie Tian currently possessed two types of sword qi, proud sword qi and astral soul sword qi. To put it bluntly, any kind of sword qi was enough to resist Ding Xiaofeng's sword heart. Nie Tianling looked coldly at the shocked Peng Shi and said, "You're no match for me without using the giant spirit true body." Although Peng Shi was a first-level giant spirit warrior, he was still not a match for Nie Tian without using his giant spirit true body. "Little bastard, you're courting death." Using the giant spirit true body against a first-tier Wanxiang martial artist was simply an insult. However, Peng Shi couldn't care less at this moment. With a furious roar, the giant spirit true body appeared behind him. Behind Peng Shi, a huge lion that was 30 to 40 meters long appeared. The turtle-striped wild lion was Peng Shi's origin spirit. The strangest thing was that the turtle-striped wild lion's entire body was covered in black stripes, appearing abnormally ruthless. Roar! The turtle-striped wild lion opened its bloody mouth and roared towards the sky. The surrounding air was filled with the stench of blood. Many people couldn't withstand the powerful aura of the turtle-striped wild lion and couldn't help but retreat. "Attack, kill them!" Peng Shi roared and ordered the black-clothed men to attack. The black-clothed men immediately started fighting with Gao Han, Ding Xiaofeng, and the others. Battle cries shook the sky. Nie Tian didn't have the time to pay attention to the others. All his attention was focused on Peng Shi. Nie Tian had to be very careful when fighting against a giant spirit realm martial artist without an astral soul. "Die!" Peng Shi roared. His eyes were filled with disdain and doubt. The turtle-striped wild lion's giant spirit true body lifted its front claw and smashed it down. It was like a mountain had suddenly collapsed, and the aura coming from it was frightening. Nie Tian didn't dare to face it head-on. He fiercely stomped on the ground, and his body shifted dozens of meters. Then he soared into the sky. The proud sword Heavenly Wings appeared on his back, and the heaven beheading sword in his hand let out a long cry. Sword light gushed out. It was 10 meters long and turned into a huge sword shadow. It pierced through the air and attacked one of the turtle-striped wild lion's eyes. Seeing Nie Tian's sword attack, the disdain in Peng Shi's eyes disappeared and was replaced with fear. He wanted to react, but it was already too late. The sword light in the berserk turtle-striped lion's eyes suddenly enlarged, and soon after, it struck. Puff! The sound of flesh being cut rang out. The sword light actually pierced into the turtle-striped wild lion's eye. Instantly, blood splattered everywhere. A sudden sharp pain spread throughout his body. Peng Shi immediately let out a hysterical howl. One of his eyes had been destroyed by Nie Tian. The Yuan spirit and the martial artist's soul were connected. If the Yuan spirit was injured, the martial artist's body would also be injured. Peng Shi retreated several steps. The turtle-striped wild lion stomped on the ground, causing the entire valley to shake and several pits to appear on the ground. Nie Tian shook the proud sword Heavenly Wings and maintained his body in midair. The corners of his mouth curled up into a faint smile. He was very satisfied with his previous attack. With his current strength, it was impossible to break through the turtle-striped wild lion's defense. However, the eye was different. It was the weakest part of the turtle-striped wild lion's defense and could be easily broken through. Peng Shi roared furiously as he looked at Nie Tian in the air, but his eyes were already filled with fear. On the other side, Gao Han, Ding Xiaofeng, and the guards of the Yuan Chamber of Commerce were forced to retreat and hide beside the carriage. Gao Han also noticed that Ding Xiaofeng seemed to be desperately protecting the carriage beside him. It seemed that there was something very important inside. Boom! Boom! The two men in black attacked at the same time. Two sharp waves of qi whistled towards Ding Xiaofeng. Ding Xiaofeng did not dodge. He stood beside the carriage and stabbed out with his sword. Although he was not weak, he was still sent flying by the joint attack of the two men. After landing on the ground, he spat out a mouthful of blood. In the next moment, Ding Xiaofeng crawled up and looked at the carriage with a face full of fear. The two men in black also noticed that something was wrong. They chuckled and walked into the carriage step by step. "Don't come near." At this time, Ding Xiaofeng, who knows where he got the strength from, suddenly leaped up, his long sword thrusting high up in the air. It was actually a desperate attack. Pooh! One of the men in black was caught off guard and was hit by the sword qi. It pierced through his chest, and he died on the spot. The other man in black was quite frightened. He took a few steps back and looked at Ding Xiaofeng in fear. Seeing this, Gao Han could not help but wonder what was on the carriage that made Ding Xiaofeng risk his life to protect it. In fact, Ding Xiaofeng did not know what was on the carriage. He only knew that there was a box on the carriage. This box was something that the young master had ordered him to protect. If anything were to happen to it, the whole caravan would be in trouble. Just as the bloody battle in the valley continued, Qiu Shan, who was waiting outside the valley, arrived at the entrance. He waited for a long time for Nie Tian to return. He was worried and brought the caravan to the entrance of the valley. Hearing the tragic battle cries in the valley, Qiu Shan's heart sank. In the next moment, he drove the carriage straight into the valley. Chapter 197. In the valley, the bloody battle had reached its climax. At this moment, something strange happened. Boom! With a loud noise, the boulder blocking the valley flew up, as if a huge force had surged out from the ground and lifted the boulder up. The next moment, a shocking scene appeared. Whoosh! A giant hand formed from black sand suddenly appeared in the air. It grabbed the boulder and threw it out like a shot put. The boulder was thrown thousands of meters away, drawing a beautiful arc in the air before crashing to the ground. Boom! The boulder fell to the ground, and the earth shook. The surrounding trees were smashed to pieces, and a huge pit appeared in the ground. Seeing this scene, everyone was shocked. Their expressions were stiff, and they were dumbfounded. Nie Tian could not help but be stunned. The boulder was dozens of meters in circumference and was roughly estimated to be at least 800,000 kilograms, if not 500,000 kilograms. The newcomer could actually lift the boulder like a toy. This strength alone was enough to shock everyone. Nie Tian's strength was at the first tier of the all-creation realm, and he had awakened 1,024 star power stars in his body. However, the absolute strength that he could unleash was only about 400,000 Jin. Even if he used martial techniques, it would only be 250,000 Jin. He was completely unable to contend against this person. 500,000 kilograms of strength. Could it be that the newcomer is a true energy realm martial artist? Nie Tian asked in surprise. Just as everyone was shocked, the giant black sand hand in the air disappeared, and a figure appeared in front of everyone. Young master! Ding Xiaofeng was the first to react, and he shouted excitedly at the newcomer. Actually, when the giant black sand hand appeared, Ding Xiaofeng already knew that the young master of the Deyuan Chamber of Commerce, Ding Yifan, had arrived. However, Ding Xiaofeng did not expect that his flame bomb would cause the young master of the Chamber of Commerce, Ding Yifan, to personally come as reinforcements. It seemed that the contents of the carriage box were very important. Otherwise, Ding Yifan would not have been alerted to come as reinforcements. Ding Xiaofeng's curiosity was aroused, and he wanted to see what was in the box. However, he only thought about it. Even if Ding Yifan opened the box for him to see, he would not dare to look. Ding Xiaofeng knew that it was better not to know some things. Once he knew, he would not live long. Nie Tian looked at Ding Yifan and frowned slightly. This was a young man around 17 or 18 years old. He was dressed in white and looked very handsome. However, his face was cold and his eyes were gloomy. It was obvious that he wasn't someone who was easy to get along with. What made Nyetian even more surprised was that Ding Yifun's strength was actually only at the giant spirit first level. Being able to explode with a strength of 1,000,000 pounds at the first level of the giant spirit realm was truly terrifying. It looks like your Yuan spirit is a spirit. Is it a mass of black sand? Or is it something that can control sand? Nyetian saw Ding Yifun's black sand hand and guessed. Holy shit, he's the young master of the Yuan trading company, Ding Yifun. He really is a freak. Gao Han reacted as well and couldn't help but click his tongue. You know him? Nyetian came to Gao Han's side and asked. Since Ding Yifun was here, then he would let them handle the rest. Nyetian didn't want to intervene anymore. Gao Han said softly, City Lord, this Ding Yifun is amazing. He is an outstanding figure of our Nanshan region's young generation. He is a super genius ranked 11th on the Nanshan region Martial Union's genius list. The 3,000 small worlds are divided into 4 regions. Nyetian was currently in one of the 4 regions, the Nanshan region. Xioshan's enemy, the Transformation God sect, was one of the top forces in the Nanshan region. The Martial Union's genius list had a genius list for each region. It only recorded young martial artists under the age of 30. Those who could enter the top 100 of the genius list were all top geniuses. Not to mention Ding Yifun, who was ranked 11th on the genius list. Super genius? Nyetian smiled faintly and said in his heart, In this world, no one dares to call themselves a genius in front of me, let alone a super genius. However, Ding Yifun was able to explode with a strength of 1,000,000 pounds at the first level of the giant spirit realm. This was not easy. Nyetian watched quietly. He wanted to see how Ding Yifun would deal with the situation in front of him. Ding Yifun's arrival directly stopped the bloody battle. Peng Shi was so scared that his face turned pale. His knees couldn't help but tremble. He never thought that casually robbing a caravan would actually provoke Ding Yifun. The original Peng Shi thought that this was just an ordinary caravan of the Yuan Merchant Association. Even if they were robbed, the Yuan Merchant Association would only blame it on Heaven Luo City. In any case, Heaven Luo City had changed to a new city lord. He didn't care. Who would have thought that Ding Yifun would actually personally appear for such an unremarkable caravan? It was too strange. You were the one who robbed the Yuan Merchant Association's caravan. Ding Yifun stood on top of a big rock and looked down at Peng Shi. His tone was cold to the point that it was suffocating. Peng Shi's teeth were trembling. His back was full of cold sweat. He couldn't even speak properly. Those who touched a Yuan Merchant Association die. Ding Yifun didn't plan to let Peng Shi finish speaking. With a deep roar, a clump of black sand flew out and transformed into a black claw. The claw directly grabbed onto Peng Shi's neck and lifted him into the air. Peng Shi actually didn't have the slightest bit of strength to resist. His face turned red and his legs kicked randomly in the air. After a moment, he breathed his last and died. Everyone gulped down a mouthful of saliva. A giant spirit realm martial artist was actually killed just like that. He didn't even have the strength to fight back. At this time, Qiushan also came to Nyetian's side. A trace of shock also appeared on his face. He reckoned that he could also easily kill Peng Shi, but it definitely wouldn't be this easy. When the caravan behind Qiushan saw this scene, they immediately stopped and didn't dare to take half a step forward. After killing Peng Shi, Ding Yifun didn't stop. His cold gaze immediately landed on Lan Yunjiang. Lan Yunjiang felt a chill on his back. He knelt down with a thud and cried bitterly, Young Master Ding, I am Heaven Luo City Lord. I am Blue Cloud Emperor's imperial uncle. I beg. Lan Yunjiang was already scared to the point that he couldn't speak coherently. Confused words came out one after another, but he only spoke halfway before he abruptly stopped. Black sand flashed in the air, and Lan Yunjiang's head directly fell to the ground. Before he died, his mouth was still open with a face full of fear. Nyetian curled his lips and glanced at Lan Yunjiang. This old fellow had already left, but he ran back by himself. He was really courting death. Next, Ding Yifun raised his palm, and countless clumps of black sand appeared in the air. They condensed into black blades and suddenly attacked the black-clothed men. In just a blink of an eye, all the black-clothed men's heads fell to the ground. All of them died tragically. Gao Han gulped down a mouthful of saliva. He rejoiced in his heart that he didn't stand on Lan Yunjiang's side. Otherwise, he would have become a headless corpse like these people. Ding Yifan killed everyone in the blink of an eye. From start to finish, there wasn't the slightest change in his expression. It seemed like this super genius not only had terrifying talent, his ruthlessness was even more terrifying. Chapter 198. Who are you people? Ding Yifan stared at Nie Tian. His eyes were still cold as he opened his mouth. Without waiting for Nie Tian to speak, Ding Xiaofeng limped forward and said, "Young master, this young master just saved us. He's not an enemy." Nie Tian just smiled faintly and said, "I'm Nie Tan, the new city lord of Heaven Luo City." Ding Yifan glanced at Nie Tian and turned to Ding Xiaofeng as if he didn't hear what he said. "Let's go." "Huh?" Nie Tian frowned slightly and his face darkened. He didn't expect that he was actually ignored. Looking at Ding Yifan's expression, this super genius obviously didn't think much of Nie Tian. "City Lord Nie, thank you for the matter just now. If it wasn't for you, I'm afraid none of my brothers and I would be alive." Ding Xiaofeng was very flexible. Seeing Nie Tian's unhappy expression, he quickly smiled apologetically. Moreover, Ding Xiaofeng also admired Nie Tian's strength very much. He was only at the first level of Wanxiang, but could fight with the first level of the Giant Spirit Realm martial artist. It was really not simple. Nie Tian nodded slightly. Then, he jerked around to look at the horse-drawn carriage beside Ding Xiaofeng and said, "Young Lord Ding, I'd like to know what's in your carriage that you have to seal it with a third-grade restrictive spell formation." The carriage Nie Tian mentioned was naturally the carriage that Ding Xiaofeng desperately protected. On that carriage, Nie Tian noticed a box that was actually sealed with a third-level restrictive spirit array. Moreover, there was a faint breath of life coming from it, as if it was a living creature. "Huh?" Ding Yifan's expression finally changed a little. He turned around cold, and a hint of killing intent shot out from his eyes. He said, "Do I have to tell you if you want to know?" Ding Yifan clearly didn't expect that Nie Tian could actually see the existence of a third-level restrictive spirit array outside the box. This kind of restrictive spirit array was very hidden. Ordinary people couldn't see it at all unless Nie Tian was an alchemist or blacksmith with amazing mental strength. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said, "That's not it. I'm just curious." "Curious?" Ding Yifan smiled coldly and said in a cold voice, "City Lord Nie, let me give you a piece of advice. Put away your curiosity, because curiosity will kill you. Let's go." With that, Ding Yifan didn't waste any more words. With a cold shout, he turned around and left. Ding Xiaofeng hurriedly cupped his hands towards Nie Tian and said apologetically, "City Lord Nie, I am Ding Xiaofeng of the Dayuan Chamber of Commerce. I will definitely pay you a visit to express my gratitude for today's grace. Farewell." Yes, Ding Yifan was arrogant, but Ding Xiaofeng was very friendly. Nie Tian did not want to reject the other party's face, so he nodded and smiled. The people of Dayuan Chamber of Commerce quickly left, leaving behind a ground littered with corpses. Nie Tian looked at Ding Yifan and the others and murmured, "What's in that box?" "Bo, boss." At this moment, Jean de Bayo suddenly walked over. His face was deathly pale, as though he had received a huge shock. "Are you okay?" Nie Tian looked at Jean de Bayo and said with a smile, "Ding Yifan's strength is a little terrifying, but you don't have to be so scared." Jean de Bayo's expression did not ease up. He suddenly whispered into Nie Tian's ear, "Boss, I know what's in that box." Nie Tian's pupils constricted slightly. He suddenly remembered that Jean de Bayo had the Fiend God blood scripture in his body. A Tier 3 restriction spirit array could block other people's perception, but it could not block Jean de Bayo's Fiend God blood scripture. Jean de Bayo's expression was nervous as he whispered, "Boss, there's a person inside. Moreover, it's a little girl." "Little girl?" Nie Tian's face sank as he thought in his heart. Could it be that this Ding Yifan is the same as Qin Yulong? He has a special hobby and specially gets little girls to play with? But this also didn't make sense. Because with Ding Yifun's status, what kind of girl couldn't he get? There's no need to go through so much trouble to transport a girl over, and there was no need to seal her with a Tier 3 restriction spirit array. What kind of girl is it? Nie Tian asked. Jean de Bayo thought for a moment and said, she looks no different from an ordinary girl, but her ears are a little long and pointed. Her eyes are gray, her hands are very long, her palms are very big, and the soles of her feet are also very big. The strangest thing is that she seemed to know that I saw her, and even asked me to save her. As Jean de Bayo spoke, his forehead began to sweat. As Nie Tian listened to Jean de Bayo's description, his expression slowly changed. He had already guessed what was inside the box. A crypt elf. That's right. Nie Tian was almost certain that the person inside the box was not a human, but a crypt elf. In this world, other than humans, there were also dwarves, elves, beastmen, and devilmen. It was just that these races were defeated by humans in the Great War of the ancient times, so they declined. Dwarves, elves, beastmen, devilmen, etc. Generally, they could only be seen occasionally in first-rate empires. They had basically been reduced to slaves of humans. In a society ruled by humans, their status was very low. Among the elves, crypt elves were a very special existence. They did not have extremely long lifespans, and their bodies were not as nimble as other elves. They were much smaller than other elves, and their appearance was far less exquisite. Even an adult crypt elf was only as tall as a 12 or 13-year-old child, only slightly larger than a dwarf. Crypt elves lived underground all year round. They did not like sunlight and did not like to come into contact with other races. They lived like a hidden family. In ancient times, there were scholars who studied elves who claimed that crypt elves were a hybrid between night elves and goblins, but this theory had never been proven. The greatest ability of crypt elves was their ability to sense ores. They could sense ores buried thousands of meters underground, and they had a unique way of refining. It was rumored that every crypt elf was a master refiner. The crypt elf that Jean de Bayo saw might not be a child, but an adult crypt elf. However, Jean de Bayo had never seen a crypt elf before, so he mistook it for a child. Nie Tian was very puzzled. Where did the people of the Deyuan Chamber of Commerce get a crypt elf? Compared to other races, crypt elves were even rarer. Even in the heaven realm, they were rarely seen. Nie Tian even suspected that Ding Yifun did not know what he had caught. However, from the protection that the Deyuan Chamber of Commerce gave to the crypt elves, it was obvious that they valued them very much. It seemed like he had to pay a visit to the Deyuan Chamber of Commerce in the future if he had the chance. De Bayo, don't tell anyone about this. It's enough that you and I know. Nie Tian reminded Jean de Bayo that not many people knew about crypt elves, so it was better not to reveal it for the time being. Next, Nie Tian got the guards to dispose of the corpses on the spot. After all, Heaven Luo Mountain was under the jurisdiction of Heaven Luo City. It was better not to let others see these corpses. Nie Tian's main purpose in coming to Heaven Luo City was the Doomsday Flame, so he did not care much about the crypt elves. After disposing of the corpses, the convoy began to move again. About half an hour later, the convoy finally walked out of Heaven Luo Mountain. Heaven Luo City was already in sight. We're finally here. Nie Tian looked at Heaven Luo City in front of him and let out a long sigh. Chapter 199. Late at night, Nie Tian led the convoy into the city quietly. Under Gao Han's lead, the convoy quickly arrived at the city lord's mansion. The city lord's mansion was empty. Lan Yunjiang moved everything clean and did not leave anything for Nie Tian. Even the servants in the mansion were almost all gone, leaving only a few old servants. Lan Yunjiang is quite ruthless, really planning to leave me an empty city. Nie Tian laughed bitterly, but this was also good. Anyway, he had dozens of carriages of valuables in his hands. In less than a day, he could make the city lord's mansion noisy. Nie Tian casually opened a carriage of valuables. The box was full of essence crystals, and looking at the color, they were all mid-grade essence crystals. Middle-grade essence crystals were worth a fortune. Middle-grade essence crystals were equivalent to 100,000 gold coins. Nietian pointed at this box of essence crystals and said, Gao Han, take these essence crystals and distribute them to the guards. In the future, you guys are still Heaven Luo City's guards. Whatever you did before, it's still the same now. Gao Han was stunned and could not react for a long time. He did not expect that Nietian was actually so generous. So many essence crystals, there were no less than a few hundred pieces. It was almost worth hundreds of millions of gold coins. Gao Han had been a guard under Lan Yunjiang for so many years and had never received such a big reward before. The other guards also stared blankly, swallowing their saliva frantically. What are you still standing there for? Carry this box of essence crystals away. Nietian looked at these people's expressions and could not help but smile. These guards were really pitiful. They indirectly helped Lan Yunjiang collect so much money, but did not get a single share. Looking at their reactions, it seemed like they had never seen so much money in their lives. In fact, Nietian did not care about these valuables at all. If not for him needing some money right now, he did not mind giving away all the valuables. Hey, thank you, City Lord. Gao Han finally reacted and could not stop smiling. He hurriedly let a few guards carry the essence crystals away. City Lord is really good to us. He just came and gave us so many rewards. In the future, I will follow City Lord. That's right. City Lord is really generous. In the future, I decided that if City Lord tells me to go east, I will never go west. We will only follow the City Lord's lead. The new City Lord is much better than that old bastard Lan Yunjiang. I really don't know where that bastard Lan Yunjiang got so much money. The group of guards discussed in low voices and happily went to divide the crystals. Boss, we've struck it rich this time. Jean de Bao walked over with a smile after the guards had all left. Even with Jean de Bao's status, he had never seen so many treasures. Nie Euro and the others also came down from the carriage. When they saw so much money, they were shocked. Big brother Nietian, we have so much money. When will we ever be able to spend it all? Nie Euro's eyes suddenly flashed as she earnestly asked. It won't take long. Nietian smiled faintly. Nie Euro's small mouth formed an O shape, looking extremely shocked and adorable. Nietian didn't say too much and said to Zhang Yifeng, Yifeng, take them to their respective rooms to rest. Everyone is tired these few days, so let's have a good rest tonight. We'll talk about the rest tomorrow. Yes. Zhang Yifeng agreed and left with Nie Euro, Tang Yuyu, and Xiuling. Nie Euro was a little reluctant, but she knew that Nietian had things to do, so she obediently left with Zhang Yifeng. Nietian said to Jean de Bao, take some people and deposit all this money into the bank tomorrow. All right. Jean de Bao agreed and chuckled. Then Nietian said to Qiushan, hire a few more servants tomorrow, but not too many. Yes. Qiushan replied respectfully. After doing all this, Nietian was also a little tired, so he found a courtyard and entered a room to rest. After a few days of rushing, Nietian and the others finally arrived at Tianluo City. Up until now, everything was going smoothly, but no one knew what would happen next. Damn it, the people from the Blue Cloud Empire are simply courting death. In a hidden place in Tianluo City, a middle-aged man's face was gloomy. He slammed his palm down, and the stone table in front of him instantly shattered into pieces. Next to the middle-aged man was a young man with 4 arms with a sinister face. If Nietian was here, he would immediately recognize that this person was the 3rd prince of the Wenqin Empire, Fenwuk. Unexpectedly, after Fenwuk escaped from Blue Cloud City, he didn't return to the Wenqin Empire, but came to Tianluo City. Uncle, I also didn't expect that the Blue Cloud Emperor would reject our Wenqin Empire's offer of 12 cities in exchange for Tianluo City. Also, that kid surnamed Nya even ordered people to kill Ho Jian and the others. He is simply too arrogant. He doesn't put the Wenqin Empire in his eyes at all. Fenwuk's chin trembled, and his face was sinister. The middle-aged man in front of Fenwuk was his uncle, Fen Lianqing. Blue Cloud Empire. Do they really think that the Wenqin Empire is a vegetarian? If they infuriate me, I'll directly send troops to annihilate them. Feng Lianxing clenched his fists, and the anger on his face couldn't be restrained. The Wenqin Empire was a second-rate empire, and it was an upper-tier empire of the Blue Cloud Empire. Who would have thought that under such circumstances, exchanging 12 cities for one city would actually fail? Moreover, even the emissary was killed. The more Feng Lianxing thought about it, the angrier he got, and he stood up and said furiously, "Wuck, return to the Wenqin Empire right now and ask Imperial Brother to directly annihilate the Blue Cloud Empire." All right. Feng Wuck had been waiting for Feng Lianxing to speak, and he immediately agreed. Wait. Right at this moment, a calm voice sounded out from the side, and it said, "Your Highness, this matter is slightly strange, and it's not advisable to make a big fuss. If other powers are alarmed, then it'll be troublesome." The person who spoke was a woman who looked to be around 25 or 26 years old, and she wore a purple dress that seemed to have fused with her. Not only did she have a charming appearance, her figure was curvaceous, and her almost perfect curves caused one to be unable to move their eyes away from her. But the strange thing was that this woman seemed to have a demonic energy, and the air around her actually appeared to be dense, as if it was being roasted by high temperature. And beside this woman was a child who looked to be around 8 or 9 years old, and he hadn't spoken all along. He was extremely quiet, and he had a maturity that didn't match his age. The woman's words were extremely effective on Feng Lianxing, and the latter waved his hand to indicate for Feng Wuck to return, and then he frowned and said, "Mr. Z, could it be that the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone in Heaven Luo Mountain has been leaked?" Dragon Bloodstone! This was the reason why the Wenqin Empire was willing to exchange 12 cities for Heaven Luo City. The Dragon Bloodstone was a miraculous crystal, and not only could it be used to forge high-grade spirit weapons, it also contained a miraculous substance called Dragon Blood. Chapter 200. Dragon Bloodstone had miraculous effects. At the same time, it was extremely rare and priceless. In large-scale auctions, a palm-sized Dragon Bloodstone was once sold for a sky-high price of 1 billion gold coins. And a drop of Dragon Blood was even more priceless. It was a treasure that money couldn't measure. The existence of Dragon Bloodstone in Heaven Luo Mountain was a huge secret. The reason why the people of Fengqin Empire knew of this secret was precisely because this woman called Mr. Z revealed it. Although Feng Lianxing had yet to see the Dragon Bloodstone, he firmly believed in Mr. Z's words, because this Mr. Z in front of him was a 6th-tier alchemy master. A 6th-tier alchemy master was already a pinnacle existence in the 3,000 Small Worlds. It was said that even the president of the 3,000 Small Worlds Alchemist Guild was only a 6th-tier alchemy master. With Mr. Z's strength, if he entered the Alchemist Guild, he could easily obtain a red-robed elder position. But Feng Lianxing knew that this Mr. Z in front of him was like a mystery. He directly appeared out of thin air in Fengqin Empire. And that child beside her, he was still an infant 10 over days ago. Now, he actually already looked like 8 or 9 years old. Feng Lianxing deduced that Mr. Z must have used some secret technique to let a baby grow so quickly. And what was even stranger was that Mr. Z was very respectful towards this child, calling him master every time he opened his mouth, completely like a servant. The secret of the Dragon Bloodstone is only known by me and master. It's impossible for others to know. Mr. Z muttered to herself. Immediately, her beautiful eyes flickered as she looked at Feng Wuck. Her expression turned slightly cold as she said, "Unless someone leaked this secret." Feng Wuck was stared at by Mr. Z. His small face turned pale, and he immediately explained, "Mr. Z, I really didn't say anything. I didn't tell anyone about the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone." Feng Lianxing also said, "Mr. Z, although Wuck is a little rash, the matter of the Dragon Bloodstone is too big. He definitely wouldn't dare to leak it to outsiders. It's best that he didn't tell anyone." Mr. Z's eyes flashed cold as she said coldly, "The Dragon Bloodstone was a rare treasure, and Heaven Luo City was located at the border of 3 empires. If this news leaked out, it would definitely set off a bloodbath in Heaven Luo City. Furthermore, there was a Danwu City beside Heaven Luo City. That was the private city of the Alchemist Guild, and there was a red-clothed elder of the Alchemist Guild overseeing it. If the news of the Dragon Bloodstone was to be known by the Alchemist Guild, then this show would be too good to watch. Compared to ordinary martial artists, alchemists were more aware of the value of the Dragon Bloodstone, a type of crystal that could directly enhance a martial artist's martial physique was truly a favorite of alchemists. Violet. At this moment, the child beside Mr. Z, who had not spoken all this while, suddenly spoke. His voice was very gloomy, completely unlike that of a child. His face flashed with a gloominess that did not match his age. There seemed to be a terrifying aura hidden in his body that could explode at any time. Master. Mr. Purple was very respectful. He did not even dare to raise his head to look at the child. The child's eyes suddenly flashed with a strange look, and he said, I feel that the master of White Flame has come to Tianluo City. Even if the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone is not leaked now, it will be known to the world soon. Looks like we have to get ready. White Flame is here. Mr. Z's face was filled with astonishment. Feng Lianxing listened to the conversation between the master and servant and was completely confused. He could not help but ask with a face full of doubt, Little mister, may I know how to address you? This was the first time that Mr. Z's master spoke. Feng Lianxing still did not know how to address this child. The child glanced at Feng Lianxing, causing Feng Lianxing to break out in cold sweat. He hurriedly lowered his head. Call me Mo Sure, the child said coldly. Yes, Lord Mo Sure. Feng Lianxing wiped off the cold sweat on his forehead and lowered his head. He could not imagine that he, a dignified level 5 giant spirit martial artist, would feel as though his soul was penetrated by a single glance from this child. Master, what will we do next? Mr. Z bowed and asked. Emosher's slightly closed eyes suddenly opened. Instead of answering Mr. Z's question, he said, White Flame's master is in Danwu City. It's time for us to make a trip there. In the room, Nietian sat cross-legged. His forehead was covered with fine beads of sweat, and his expression was also very focused. In his soul space, he was inscribing an astral soul. On top of the Primal Chaos original coffin, a vivid and lifelike fire dragon slowly appeared. Every part of the fire dragon was very lifelike. The dragon head, the dragon body, the dragon claws, the dragon whiskers, and even every dragon scale were exquisite to the extreme. If one were to sense it carefully, they would discover that the entire body of the fire dragon was emitting a scorching aura, as though it was a burning flame. This is the first second rank astral soul I have inscribed. I'm only missing an eye. Nietian was very excited, unable to conceal the agitation on his face. A second rank astral soul appeared on the 4th page of the Astral Soul Origin Codex. After Nietian's strength reached the manifestation realm, he could open the 4th page of the Astral Soul. The 4th page of the Astral Soul was no longer a first-rank Astral Soul, but a second-rank Astral Soul. Compared to a first-rank Astral Soul, a second-rank Astral Soul was more complicated, and the picture was more exquisite. Nietian could even feel that the second-rank Astral Soul seemed to contain some kind of subtle spiritual aura. The Astral Soul that Nietian was currently inscribing was called the Soul of the Scarlet Dragon. In order to inscribe the Soul of the Scarlet Dragon, Nietian had spent a lot of time. He had started inscribing when he was still in Blue Cloud City, and he did not stop on the way to Heaven Luo City. From start to finish, Nietian had spent less than 10 days, and he was finally about to finish inscribing the Soul of the Scarlet Dragon. The Soul of the Scarlet Dragon is finally done. After a while, Nietian let out a long sigh, and a satisfied smile appeared on his face. This was the first second-rank astral soul he had inscribed, and the amount of mental energy and star energy it consumed was far greater than the previous astral souls. Right now, Nietian could not estimate the power of the Soul of the Scarlet Dragon, but the instantaneous burst of power should be enough to kill a first-rank giant spirit realm warrior. However, to kill an extraordinary first-rank giant spirit realm warrior like Ding Yifan would probably be a little difficult. After inscribing the astral soul, Nietian rested for a while to recover his mental energy, and then he walked out of the room. Gazing at the fiery red morning glow in the east, Nietian felt a little worried in his heart. The main body of the Doomsday Flame and its strongest clone came to Heaven Luo City, and then the people of the Wenqin Empire wanted to exchange 12 cities for Heaven Luo City, and then the Yuan Trade Association secretly sent over a crypt spirit. These three matters did not seem to have any connection, but if one thought about it carefully, one would realize that the final intersection point was in one place, Heaven Luo City. Why did the Doomsday Flame come to Heaven Luo City? Why did the people of the Wenqin Empire want to obtain Heaven Luo City so urgently? The doubts in Nietian's heart grew stronger and stronger, but he could not think of a reason at this moment, so he could only give up for now. Let me take a look again. Doomsday Flame, where are you now? Nietian faintly smiled and took out the devil fire diagram, but in the next moment, his expression changed. The devil fire diagram has lost its effect. Nietian stared at the devil fire diagram for a long time, but there was no reaction at all. Chapter 201. After staring at the demon fire diagram for a while, Nietian gradually calmed down. The devil fire diagram was created by an ancient God realm alchemist and had existed for tens of thousands of years. It was impossible for it to suddenly fail. So, the most likely reason was that there was a problem with the Doomsday Flame. Could it be that the Doomsday Flame has condensed a physical body and the demonic fire aura on its body has completely disappeared? Nietian frowned as he thought about it, but the next moment, he overturned this guess. According to his previous estimations, even if the Doomsday Flame used the magic flower blood lotus to form a physical body, it would at least need to raise its strength to the giant spirit realm in order to completely rid itself of the demonic fire's aura. After the Doomsday Flame condensed his fleshly body, he would have to start cultivating from the first level of the origin meridian. Even if he had a heaven-defying physique, he would still need at least 3 months to advance from the first level of the origin meridian to the first level of the giant spirit. Less than a month had passed, and the Doomsday Flame's strength should be around the origin spirit realm. At most, he had just reached the manifestation realm. There was no way he was in the giant spirit realm. Then, there was only one reason left to explain the demon fire diagram's sudden failure, and that was that the Doomsday Flame had used some special substance to suppress the demonic fire aura in his body, preventing Nietian from finding him. Doomsday Flame, you really are ruthless. Forcefully suppressing the demonic fire's aura is equivalent to suppressing the speed at which your strength increases. It seems that you are hiding from me. Nietian faintly smiled, but soon became doubtful again. He muttered, Doomsday Flame, if you really want to hide from me, you can run far away. Anyway, your safety is guaranteed with a blazing purple flame. But why did you choose to appear in Tianluo City? Is there really something in Tianluo City that you're interested in? Thinking of this, Nietian vaguely guessed that Heaven Luo City might have some unexpected surprises waiting for him. No matter how one looked at it, the abnormal behavior of the Doomsday Flame and the Wenqin Empire could not be a coincidence. This undoubtedly meant that perhaps the Doomsday Flame was leading the change of cities in the Fengqin Empire. However, due to a freak combination of factors, the meticulously planned change of city was destroyed by Nietian. Also, Nietian had a feeling that the Great Yuan Chamber of Commerce was secretly transporting the crypt spirits. He had a feeling that these matters were inextricably linked. At this time, Nietian took out a dark steel token. It was the token that Gu Yi had given him before. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly as he muttered, Perhaps old man Gu knows what's going on. Since I've come to Heaven Luo City, I might as well pay him a visit. Unable to figure out what was going on, Nietian thought of Gu Yi. Gu Yi once said that he was at Danwu City's Alchemist Guild, and Nietian could look for him anytime. Danwu City was located in Heaven Luo City, and the two cities were only separated by 2 city gates. Nietian looked at the mystical iron token in his hand, and his gaze involuntarily landed on the back of the token, Red Robe, as he muttered, Gu Yi, could you be the Red Robe Elder of the Alchemist Association? The Red Robe Elder of the Alchemist Association was an existence that was only inferior to the president of the Alchemist Association. If Gu was really the Red Robe Elder of the Alchemist Association, Nyetian might be able to make use of his identity to do something. Thinking of this, Nyetian couldn't help but reveal a smile as he firmed up the idea of paying a visit to Gu. Boss, just as Nyetian was preparing to go out, Jean de Bayo ran over excitedly. Is there anything good? Nyetian asked with a smile when he saw Jean de Bayo's excited look. Haha, very good. Jean de Bayo smiled mysteriously, then took out a dark gold card and said, Boss, I've converted all the valuables in those cards into crystals and deposited them into the Dayuan Bank. Guess how many crystals are there in total? Nyetian shook his head slightly, indicating that he couldn't guess. So many carts of valuables, it was really hard for Nyetian to guess so suddenly. But seeing how excited Jean de Bayo was, it must be a huge sum of money. This number, Jean de Bayo was in a fat pig's hand, his 5 fingers spreading open with all his might. 50,000 middle-grade crystals? Nyetian guessed blindly. Low-grade crystals were equivalent to 10,000 gold coins. Middle-grade crystals were equivalent to 10 low-grade crystals. 50,000 middle-grade crystals, that was already 5 billion gold coins. 5 billion gold coins, that was probably a small mountain of gold coins. Boss, Jean de Bayo shook his head slightly, his large mouth almost unable to close as he said with a chuckle. 50,000 is 50,000, but it's 50,000 high-grade crystals. 50,000 high-grade crystals, that was 500,000 middle-grade crystals, a whole 10 times higher than Nyetian's guess. Simply ridiculous. This Lan Yunjiang was indeed a little too much. Probably when he was the city lord, the citizens of Heaven Luo City all tightened their belts to live. Oh, that's 500,000 middle-grade crystals. That's not a small amount. Nyetian had a calm expression, only smiling slightly. Boss, what kind of reaction is that? Jean de Bayo was clearly very dissatisfied with Nyetian's reaction and said angrily, What do you mean, not a small amount? 500,000 middle-grade crystals. Even my father might not be able to take it out. A mere city lord of Blue Cloud River District actually has such a huge sum. Simply too shady. But Nyetian said, after all, he also accumulated for several decades. It's not easy. Jean de Bayo had a speechless look. That expression seemed to be saying, really not easy enough, and it was snatched away by you. Boss, the Dayuan Bank is a bank opened by the Dayuan Merchant Association. It has branches in various cities in the 3,000 small worlds. As long as you hold this card, you can withdraw money from any bank branch, Jean de Bayo said as he handed over the dark gold card in his hand. The Dayuan Merchant Association was indeed worthy of being one of the 7 top merchant associations in the Martial Merchant Association. The banks they opened could be found throughout the entire mini Sumeru world. Jean de Bayo deposited all his money in the Dayuan Bank's Heaven Luo City branch. Nyetian did not take the card, but said with a smile, I have no use for money. You take it. Anyway, everything I do in the future will be paid by you. Jean de Bayo chuckled, obviously not declining, and said, All right, I'll help boss keep it first. Although 500,000 middle-grade crystals was not a small amount, to Nyetian, it did not have much attraction. This was a world of experts where martial arts reigned supreme. Some truly precious things simply could not be bought with money. For example, some high-grade spirit pills, high-grade martial arts, and martial techniques. Those were all the clan treasures of large clans. No matter how much money, it was impossible to buy them. However, 500,000 essence crystals could buy a lot of things. At least to the current Nyetian, it would be of great use. Nyetian and Jean de Bayo chatted and laughed as they walked out of the courtyard, arriving at the city lord manor's inner hall. In the inner hall, several servants were busy, already preparing a table full of sumptuous dishes. Qiushan recruited 6 servants for the city lord manor. They were all ordinary people, and one look, and it was obvious that they were very honest people. Big brother Nyetian, come and eat quickly. Nyeyuro had already sat at the dining table, and when she saw Nyetian coming over, she shouted happily. Nietion nodded with a smile and walked over quickly, saying, "Ninth sister, did you secretly eat? Your little belly is round now." Nyeuro's little face blushed, and she hugged little Guai in her arms, saying, "I just ate a little. It's all little Guai's gluttony. I just ate a little." Everyone was amused by Nyeuro's cute appearance and laughed. Chapter 202. Danwu City was right next to Heaven Luo City, but it was much bigger than Heaven Luo City. The biggest difference between Danwu City and other cities was that it was a private city that belonged to the Alchemist Association. So even if it was at the border of the three second-rate empires, Fengqin Empire, Shui Wu Empire, and Sun Shu Empire, it could still ignore all the disputes in the outside world, like a lone island in the ocean, maintaining its peace. For hundreds of years, no matter how fierce the disputes between the three empires were, the flames of war never dared to burn into Danwu City. Because this city belonged to the Alchemist Association, no one dared to have covetous thoughts. It was precisely because of Danwu City's peace that many large merchant associations and clans would set up branches in the city. The Yuan Association, as one of the 7 top merchant associations in the Martial Gathering Merchant Union, naturally had a branch in Danwu City, and also had a very close cooperative relationship with Danwu City's Alchemist Association. At this moment, in the auction house on the 3rd floor of the Yuan Association, a large-scale auction was being prepared. Inside a luxurious private room in the auction house. Didn't expect that Ding Yifan, this kid, actually really got a Crypt Sprite. The Yuan Association's strength is indeed not to be underestimated. A goateed old man laughed heartily, appearing very happy. And beside him, a dwarf replied in a low, muffled voice, "Big brother, are Crypt Sprites really that powerful? To be able to detect mineral deposits buried hundreds of meters underground?" This old man and dwarf were none other than Gu Yi and Tong Fu. Gu Yi was currently wearing a long robe, and the long robe was printed with scarlet flames, rather glaring. Anyone with some knowledge could tell that this long robe was the symbol of an alchemist's identity, the long robe of the Alchemist Association's red-clothed elders. Nietion did not guess wrongly. Gu Yi was indeed one of the 7 red-clothed elders of the Alchemist Association. That legendary red-clothed elder who was holding down the fort in Danwu City was Gu Yi. It was just that Gu Yi had left Danwu City for decades. Probably no one knew about it. At this moment, beside Gu Yi, a green-clothed young lady pondered for a moment and said, "Teacher, I've never heard of Crypt Sprites before. Could Ding Yifan have made a fake Crypt Sprite to deceive us?" The young lady was 15 or 16 years old, with a very pleasant voice, an exquisite figure, and exquisite facial features. Especially when she opened her mouth to speak, she would always raise her forehead, revealing her snow-white neck, like a proud swan. She was called Shui Linglong, the little princess of the Water Crow Empire. Gu Yi used to be a member of the Water Crow Empire and was the president of the Water Crow Empire's Alchemist Guild. The current president of the Water Crow Empire's Alchemist Guild was his disciple and had some friendship with the Water Crow Emperor. Emperor Shui Wu sent the little princess over to acknowledge him as her master. Gu Yi saw that the latter's talent was not bad, so he accepted her. Shui Linglong had been by Gu Yi's side for less than a month, but Gu Yi was very satisfied with her. He did not hide anything from her. This young lady was only 15 years old, but her mental strength had already reached a terrifying 29th level, and she had long since become a second-ranked pill master. Gu Yi estimated that it would not take long for Shui Linglong's mental power to reach the 30th rank. Then she would be able to become a Tier 3 alchemist. A 15-year-old Tier 3 apothecary. Just the thought of it was terrifying. Gu Yi looked at Shui Linglong, tapped the latter's small head, and said with a smile, "Linglong girl, you are looking down on your teacher too much. I know that Ding Yifan has some fame among the younger generation of the southern region. I heard that he is a super genius ranked 11th on the Martial Merchant Union's genius list. However, even if he is the number 1 genius on the genius list, he would not dare to make trouble in front of me. If he dares to make fun of me, even his father would not be able to protect him." Ding Yifan was extremely famous among the younger generation of the various countries in the southern region. He was the dream lover of thousands of young girls. Shui Linglong had her first awakening of love, and she also had some admiration for Ding Yifan. Tong Fu muttered on the side, "Big brother, even if little baby Ding really got the crypt spirits with just a silly spirit, can he really detect the location of the dragon bloodstone?" Dwarves had a natural hatred for the elves. Even if Tong Fu had never seen the crypt spirits, just the word elf behind it made him very unhappy. But in his words, he mentioned a name, Dragon Bloodstone. Tong Fu inadvertently mentioned the Dragon Bloodstone, exposing the purpose of Gu Yi wanting the crypt spirits, to detect the location of the Dragon Bloodstone. It turned out that more than half a month ago, when Gu Yi passed by Tian Luo Mountain, the Devil Fire White Flame Lai Exen, who had already fused with his original spirit, sensed the existence of the Dragon Bloodstone in Tian Luo Mountain. This discovery made him extremely excited. The Devil Fire had a keen sense of all kinds of ores. Without the White Flame Lai Exen, Gu Yi would not have been able to find the Dragon Bloodstone. Unfortunately, the White Flame Lai Exen could not determine the exact location of the Dragon Bloodstone. Therefore, Gu Yi thought of the crypt spirits that had a special ability to sense ores. He had only inadvertently mentioned it to Ding Yifan, who knew that the latter really got a crypt spirit. Gu Yi received a notice from Ding Yifan, saying that the Yuan Chamber of Commerce would hold an auction and the crypt spirits would be publicly auctioned. If Gu Yi was interested, he could come and bid. Therefore, Gu Yi and Tong Fu appeared at the auction house. Ding Yifan's move slightly surprised Gu Yi. He thought that the former would directly give the crypt spirit to him. He did not expect that it would be publicly auctioned. It seems that Ding Yifan is not simple. Could he have sensed something? Gu Yi said in his heart. Other than Tong Fu and Shui Linglong, Gu Yi did not let anyone else know about the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone in Tian Luo Mountain. Gu Yi really did not believe that Ding Yifan knew anything. However, there were no airtight walls in the world. Perhaps the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone had really been leaked. Gu Yi had to be prepared for everything. He had the Alchemist Guild behind him. Even if the Dragon Bloodstone really came out, he was not afraid. In the 3,000 miniature worlds, the forces that dared to challenge the Alchemist Guild could be counted on one hand. Gu Yi did not think so much for the time being. Next, he just had to prepare for the auction. He was determined to get the crypt spirit. Very few people knew the value of the crypt spirit. If he was lucky, there might not be a single competitor. At that time, he could just use the price of an ordinary slave to bid for the crypt spirit. At the same time, on the streets of Danwu City, the figures of Nie Tian and the others appeared. Coming to Danwu City, Nie Tian originally planned to visit Gu Yi. However, he accidentally heard that the Yuan Chamber of Commerce was going to hold an auction. He wanted to watch the excitement and see if there was anything he was interested in. Walking on the streets, the figures of Nie Tian and the others were more eye-catching. Other than Xiao Shan and Jean de Bao, Nie Yuro and the others followed. When the passers-by saw Nie Tian and the others walking over, they could not help but take a few more glances. Their gazes were always on Tang Yuyu. One had to admit that the current Tang Yuyu was indeed very radiant and beautiful, attracting people's wild and fanciful thoughts. She was very tall, far taller than the average girl, almost the same height as Nie Tian. She wore a pale red long dress. It was not revealing, but it could not hide her big breasts. The tight little shirt almost could not restrain those two bountiful lumps, exposing her perfect figure. Nie Tian also did not expect that Tang Yuyu, who had changed into women's clothes, would actually be so beautiful. She was simply a natural stunner. Very soon, Nie Tian and the others arrived at the Yuan Chamber of Commerce. Chapter 203. A few well-dressed youths had frivolous looks on their faces as they stared fixedly at the two lumps on Tang Yuyu's chest. Their expressions seemed as if they wanted to pounce on her and take a few hundred bites. Ever since Tang Yuyu appeared, these people's gazes had never left her body. Moreover, they would point at her from time to time and even laugh out loud from time to time, almost drooling. Nie Tian's face darkened when he noticed these people, these shameless fellows. It was one thing for them to be wretched, but they had to show it so obviously. Weren't they looking for a beating? Tang Yu naturally noticed that she was being stared at, but she was no longer that cruel and ruthless maiden killer. After losing her memories, her temperament had completely changed. Her way of thinking was even simpler than Ye Yuro's. Therefore, not only did she not get angry, but she even smiled sweetly. In this way, those fellows became even more arrogant. Their faces rippled with wretched smiles as they chuckled mischievously. Young Master Sheng, that chick smiled at you. Don't tell me she's taken a fancy to you? She must be interested in young Master Sheng. Our young Master Sheng is elegant and suave. He's the best at pleasing this kind of chick. Young Master Sheng, this chick looks like a virgin. If we get her, we'll have to fight for 300 rounds. These people spoke one after another. The more they spoke, the more overboard they became. They completely disregarded Nie Tian and the others. That young man called young Master Sheng's gaze wandered over Tang Yuyu's body without restraint. If his eyes were a little bigger, his eyeballs would have popped out. A bunch of dogsh *T. Jean de Bayo couldn't help but curse when he saw how arrogant these people were. Nie Tian nodded slightly. Even if Jean de Bayo didn't curse, he would. These people were obviously young masters from rich families. It was fine if they were a little arrogant at home, but they still wanted to act like a young master outside. They were simply courting death. That young man called young Master Sheng's strength was not bad. He was already at the 9th level of the Wanxiang realm. He looked to be about 25 or 26 years old. It was not bad to have such strength. Fatty, who are you talking to? Do you want to die? Young Master Sheng did not say anything, but a young man beside him shouted out and said with a hideous smile, "Do you know of our young Master Sheng's strength and background? He is definitely not someone you can provoke. If you're smart, then kowtow a few times and scram. Otherwise." However, this person had only spoken halfway when 2 murderous sword chis shot out from the sky. Swoosh! Whoosh! The sword chi flew over and directly cut off that person's ears. My ears! Unable to bear the pain, the man subconsciously covered his ears and suddenly howled miserably. Go on. I also want to know what will happen if we don't kowtow and scram. Nie Tianling smiled coldly, his eyes filled with killing intent. He had seen a lot of idiots and arrogant people, but it was rare to see such an idiot who was still so arrogant. Nie Tian really couldn't bear to listen to this person's stupid words, so he couldn't help but make a move. Young Master Sheng and the others were stunned and couldn't react for a moment. They didn't expect that Nie Tian would actually dare to make a move so suddenly and so ruthlessly and mercilessly. Little bastard, how dare you touch my people? Young Master Sheng roared angrily, his face revealing a hideous expression. He was like an enraged hedgehog, all the needles on his body standing up. Die! Young Master Sheng punched out with all his strength. The mighty fist whistled out and directly attacked Nie Tian. Nie Tian didn't dodge and directly stabbed out with his sword. The sword chi was like water, surging out violently. What a fast sword! Young Master Sheng only saw the sword light flash before his eyes and couldn't react at all. His expression froze for a moment. Bang! An explosion sounded in the air. Young Master Sheng's fist was broken, and he was forced to retreat by the sword light, almost unable to stand. On the other hand, Nie Tian was like an old tree with its roots entrenched, not moving at all. In this kind of close combat, even a giant spirit realm martial artist wouldn't be able to gain any advantage against Nie Tian, let alone a 9th level manifestation realm martial artist. Young Master Sheng was furious. He didn't expect that he would be repelled by a 1st level manifestation realm martial artist. I was just giving you a warning just now. If you dare to attack again, I'll definitely kill you. Nie Tian said in a deep voice with a gloomy expression. This was Danwu City, after all. Nie Tian didn't want to kill people, but if the other party was really stupid, he didn't mind killing him. Little bastard, you're courting death. Being threatened by a 1st level manifestation realm martial artist, young Master Sheng immediately felt greatly humiliated. He shouted angrily, and the origin spirit appeared behind him. It was actually a bristled hedgehog. The bristled hedgehog's bristles stood up, obviously furious to the extreme. Nie Tian shook his head slightly. Since the other party was really courting death, he could only make a move. Stop! Right at this moment, a cloud of black sand attacked from the sky. Nietian turned around, raised his hand, and stabbed out with his sword. He was actually forced back several steps by the black sand. This cloud of black sand was very familiar. It was precisely from Ding Yifan. Ding Yifan, young Master Sheng, was also very surprised when he saw Ding Yifan arrive. Ding Yifan walked over slowly. He didn't look at young Master Sheng. Instead, he came to Nietian's side and said in a low voice, "City Lord Nye, this person is Sheng from Sun Chu Empire's 7th Imperial Palace. Let's end this matter here." Nietian frowned slightly and glanced at Gong Sheng, whose eyes were still wide open in anger. No wonder this guy was so arrogant. It turned out that he was a prince of Sun Chu Empire. Sun Chu Empire was the same as Feng Qin Empire. Both were second-rate empires. Because Danwu City was located at the border of 3 empires, these princes and aristocratic families' young masters liked to visit Danwu City. Nietian thought for a moment, smiled, and said, "I didn't want to make a move. It's just that this fool was sincerely looking for a beating, and I couldn't help it." "Stinking brat, say it again." Gong Sheng pointed at Nietian and gnashed his teeth in hatred, but he didn't dare to make a move again. In front of Ding Yifan, even if he was a prince of Sun Chu Empire, he didn't dare to be impudent. After all, this was the Yuan Chamber of Commerce's territory, and Ding Yifan was a figure on the genius ranking. In the South Mountain region, Ding Yifan's reputation was very great. Especially the younger generation martial artists, almost all knew him or had heard of his name. Nietian smiled faintly and said, "It's the same even if I say it 100 times. It won't change the fact that you're an idiot." Gong Sheng's face was gloomy. If Ding Yifan wasn't here, he would even have the thought of pouncing on Nietian and tearing him apart. Ding Yifan turned and glanced at Gong Sheng. He said, "Gong Sheng, City Lord Nye is my friend. Let's drop this matter here." Ding Yifan's tone was very cold. It was a completely commanding tone. "Fine," Gong Sheng said eccentrically. "Since young Master Ding has spoken, I will give you this face. But you can only protect this person for a while. As long as he walks out of Danwu City, I will definitely kill him." Gong Sheng's attitude was very arrogant. He completely didn't know that if it wasn't for Ding Yifan arriving in time just now, he would very likely be a corpse right now. Nietian looked at Gong Sheng's roguish appearance, and the corners of his mouth curled into a disdainful smile. Nietian didn't like trouble, but he wasn't afraid of trouble either. If someone wanted to become his trouble, that person must be eliminated. Chapter 204. With that, Gong Sheng swaggered into the Chamber of Commerce. Nietian stared at Gong Sheng's back. A murderous look flashed across his eyes. It was rare to see an idiot as arrogant as Gong Sheng. He was determined to have Tang Yuyu. He wondered how Tang 13 would react if she heard this. Ding Yifan sensed something and said, "Castellan Nye, Gong Sheng is arrogant, but he has the right to be so. The Rishu Empire is not to be messed with. I suggest you don't kill him." Nietian smiled faintly, a hint of determination appearing at the corner of his mouth as he said, "What if I have to?" Ding Yifan's face stiffened, but he didn't say anything. He turned and walked into the Chamber of Commerce. Looking at Ding Yifan's back, Nietian thought to himself, "What kind of person is this Ding Yifan?" Ding Yifan stopped the fight between Nietian and Gong Sheng. On the surface, it seemed like he was helping Nietian. However, Nietian had a feeling that things weren't that simple. "Boss, the auction is about to start. Let's go in," Jean de Bayo reminded Nietian. Nietian nodded and walked into the Chamber of Commerce. Tang Yuyu was confused. He asked Xiao Linger in a low voice, "Linger, why did Nietian fight with someone just now?" Xiao Linger looked at Tang Yuyu speechlessly. She thought to herself, "It's because of you. Don't you understand? You can't afford to hurt someone with amnesia." Soon, Nietian and the others entered the auction room on the 3rd floor. The auction room was huge. It could accommodate tens of thousands of people. There were many things to be auctioned today, and the entire auction house was packed with people. The crowd was moving, and the sky was full of noise. Castellan Nye. As soon as they entered the auction room, a familiar face walked over. It was Ding Xiaofeng. Nie Tian saw Ding Xiaofeng and nodded with a smile. Castellan Nie. Ding Xiaofeng was very polite. He walked over quickly and said, "There are many people here. Our young master has prepared a VIP room for you. Please follow me." "Oh." Nie Tian smiled playfully and said, "Your young master really cares about me. First, he didn't let me offend the prince of the Rishu Empire, and now he's arranged a VIP room for me. Isn't he being a little too enthusiastic?" "Not at all." Ding Xiaofeng smiled awkwardly and said, "City Lord Nie is an esteemed guest of the Dayuan Chamber of Commerce. Didn't you deposit 500,000 mid-grade origin crystals with the Dayuan Bank today?" Nie Tian smiled faintly. He had actually forgotten about this matter. At the end of the day, Ding Yifan was still a businessman, so he was more sensitive to money. Jean de Bayo deposited 500,000 mid-grade essence crystals in one go. It was not strange for Ding Yifan to know of such a large sum very quickly. Nie Tian no longer declined and followed Ding Xiaofeng to a luxurious VIP lounge. Once he entered the VIP lounge, he could no longer hear any of the surrounding noises. This VIP lounge was obviously equipped with a soundproof spiritual array. Setting up a spirit array for just one VIP lounge was enough to show how wealthy the Dayuan Chamber of Commerce was. Moreover, this soundproof spiritual array had a switch. Once the auction started, the spiritual array would automatically turn off. "Big brother Nie Tian, it's so lively down there. Ro doesn't want to stay here. I want to go out and take a look." Nie Yuro came to the VIP lounge, but she seemed very unhappy and pulled Nie Tian. "You guys don't want to stay here either?" Nie Tian glanced at Tang Yuyu and Xiao Ling. The two girls clearly didn't want to stay in the dull VIP lounge either. And the two girls nodded in unison. Nie Tian was speechless. What kind of fate was this? They felt uncomfortable after entering the VIP lounge. However, the auction house in front of him was indeed very large. There were many strange things on display, which were very attractive to curious little girls. Nie Tian said to Qiu Shan, "Qiu Shan, you go with them. Protect them well. If anyone tries to provoke you, don't hesitate to attack." Tang Yuyu was too coveted after all, so Nie Tian had to warn Qiu Shan. "Yes." Qiu Shan bowed and agreed. Qiu Shan left with the three girls, leaving only Nie Tian, Jean de Bayo, and Zhang Yifeng in the VIP lounge. Zhang Yifeng thought for a moment and said, "Teacher, I feel that Ding Yifan isn't that simple. On the surface, he seems to be trying to rope us in, but there must be a deeper consideration behind the scenes." Jean de Bayo didn't wait for Nie Tian to speak and chuckled. "That kid doesn't have so many thoughts. I think he thinks we're rich, so he suddenly saved 500,000 mid-grade origin crystals. He was scared by us." Nie Tian glanced at Jean de Bayo and shook his head slightly. Jean de Bayo was still too young and couldn't see the essence of the matter. The Yuan Chamber of Commerce was one of the 7 top Chamber of Commerce in the Martial Gathering Chamber of Commerce. As the young master of the Yuan, why would Ding Yifan care about a mere 500,000 mid-grade origin crystals? Moreover, since Ding Yifan was on a genius ranking, how could he be a person who valued money so much? No matter what his motives are, as long as he doesn't harm us, it's fine. Otherwise, I won't let him off either. Nie Tian smiled faintly, a hint of coldness floating across his face. At the same time, in another VIP lounge of the auction house. "Has Nie Tian entered the VIP lounge?" Ding Yifan asked indifferently, his face not showing much of an expression. "Young Master, City Lord Nie has entered the VIP lounge. According to Young Master's instructions, his VIP lounge is beside Grandmaster Gu Yi." Ding Xiaofeng stood opposite Ding Yifan and bowed, not daring to disobey in the slightest. "Very good." Ding Yifan's handsome face finally revealed a hint of a smile as he said softly, "Grandmaster Gu Yi, Nie Tian City Lord, since you're so interested in the Crypt Sprites, will there be an exciting competition next?" Crypt Sprites. Ding Yifan also said this name. Gu Yi had underestimated Ding Yifan. Since Ding Yifan had found a Crypt Sprite for Gu Yi, how could he not secretly investigate the uses of Crypt Sprites? Knowing that the crypt sprites were most proficient in sensing ores, Ding Yifan guessed something fishy from it. He faintly felt that perhaps Gu Yi knew that there were some precious mineral deposits nearby and needed the crypt sprites to find out the specific location. As for what these precious mineral deposits were, it was unknown. And the reason why Nietian caught Ding Yifan's attention was obviously not because he had saved up 500,000 mid-grade essence crystals, but because of a casual remark that night. Nietian had once seen that the crypt sprites were sealed by a Tier 3 restrictive spirit array. It was this point that made him arouse Ding Yifan's interest. The Tier 3 restrictive spirit array that Ding Yifan had set up was arranged by a Tier 4 spiritual array master. Ordinary people would not be able to see through it at all, unless it was a martial artist whose spiritual power had reached Tier 40 and above, or someone had a special sense towards restrictive spirit arrays. Ding Yifan naturally would not believe that Nie Tian's spiritual power would reach Tier 40 and above. The increase of spiritual power was different from martial artist cultivation. It was a slow accumulation process. Even if one consumed some heaven and earth treasures, it would only slightly increase the speed of spiritual power increase. The most abnormal spiritual power genius that Ding Yifan had ever seen was one of Sumi Ling City's 3 great evildoers, Gu Qiolong. This person was only 20 years old, but his spiritual power had already reached a terrifying Tier 45. He was a genuine Tier 4 alchemist and Tier 4 weapon craftsman. Chapter 205. Ding Yifan guessed that it was definitely impossible for Nie Tian's mental strength to reach rank 40 and above, so he must be a martial artist with a special sense for spirit formations. And judging from Nie Tian's battle with Peng Shi, this first-level giant spirit martial artist, and his attitude towards the victory of the 7th Emperor's palace that night, this was clearly not an ordinary youth. Since the Blue Cloud Empire's emperor let a teenage youth oversee Heaven Luo City, this place where dragons and snakes mingled, it was enough to show that Nie Tian had a certain level of strength. Ding Yifan even found out what Nie Tian had done in Blue Cloud City during this period of time, which surprised him even more. Hence, he developed a strong interest in Nie Tian. Ding Yifan guessed that there must be a great force behind Nie Tian. It was just that this force had not been revealed yet. Therefore, it was undoubtedly a good idea to use Nie Tian to probe the ancient will. One had to admit that Ding Yifan's mind was sharp and meticulous. Unfortunately, regarding Nie Tian, he guessed completely wrong. Nie Tian did not have any great force behind him, and his mental strength had indeed reached rank 40. The most important thing was that Nie Tian already knew of the existence of the crypt sprites. Crypt sprites. This was also the reason why Nie Tian came to the auction house. He wanted to see if Ding Yifan would take out the crypt sprites to auction. If the crypt sprites were to be auctioned publicly, even if Nie Tian had to spend all his wealth, he must get it. The preciousness of the crypt sprites was not something that ordinary people could understand. Even if he had to throw in all 500,000 middle-grade essence crystals, Nie Tian must get the crypt sprites. It was just that he did not know if Ding Yifan would auction the crypt sprites. Nie Tian and Ding Yifan definitely did not know. The two of them thought of the same thing. Ding Yifan wanted Nie Tian to bid for the crypt sprites, and Nie Tian wanted Ding Yifan to auction the crypt sprites. Both of them were taking what they needed. It was just that this way, Gu Yi would probably suffer. After a moment, the noisy auction house suddenly quietened down. On the auction stage, a young woman in her 20s leisurely walked over, twisting her graceful figure. This was a charming and seductive woman wearing a pink dress. Her figure was tall and slender, and her curves were curvaceous. Her chest was full to the point of exploding, and her red lips were scorching hot. She was exceptionally charming. If Mo Rushi and Rui Qinyu were devastatingly beautiful, then this woman in front of him was devastatingly beautiful. Her appearance immediately attracted countless gazes. Many men stared blankly, gulping with all their might. She glanced at the crowded auction house, which was already filled to the brim. She could not help but smile charmingly as she spoke in a seductive voice. "Welcome to the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce's auction house. I am the auctioneer of the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce. Aokiki Lily. Aoki Lily said as she scanned the crowd with her enchanting eyes. Her voice wasn't loud, but that crisp and numbing voice seemed to have a magical power that could invade people's eardrums, as if she was speaking right into their ears. As soon as Aoki Lily spoke, the crowd below almost went crazy. F***CK me. She's the chief auctioneer of the UN Chamber of Commerce. Aoki Lily. She's so beautiful. Is there any justice in this world? They're both women, but why is there such a huge disparity between them? I'm going to divorce my wife when I get back, someone said angrily. Miss Lily's voice is so beautiful. It's so sweet that it makes one's bones melt. Being able to see Miss Lily today, it's worth dying, someone said in a daze. Miss Lily, I really love you. I want to have a bunch of monkeys with you. The most exaggerated thing was that there was actually a public confession. In the VIP room, Jean DeBayo's eyes were also glued to the scene. DeBayo, Niet Tan reminded Jean DeBayo, and the latter only then came to his senses. It had to be said that when Aoki Lily appeared just now, even Niet Tan almost couldn't recover from his daze. However, he quickly came to his senses and confirmed that this Aoki Lily was not simple. Her original spirit seemed to have a magical power that could cause people to hallucinate. If one's willpower or strength was not strong enough, one look from Aoki Lily would probably cause them to fall for her. Nietian took another look at Aokiki, who was wearing a long, pink dress, and cursed inwardly. This woman is a demon. So she's Aoki Lily. Jean DeBayo said embarrassedly as he calmed down and wiped the cold sweat off his forehead. Fortunately, Xiaoling didn't see his embarrassed expression just now. Otherwise, it would be troublesome. You know this woman? Nietian was slightly stunned. Jean DeBayo said, Boss, this woman is amazing. She's a great beauty that everyone in the Nanshan region knows about. I've only heard of her before, but today is the first time I've seen her. Nietian nodded slightly. Aoki Lily was indeed very beautiful. That was an undeniable fact. Young Master Jean, I've heard that Aoki Lily is ranked 10th on the Nanshan Region Genius list of the Martial Gathering Merchant Union. Is that true? Zhang Yifeng had clearly heard of Aoki Lily's name and asked curiously. Nietian couldn't help but be surprised. If Aoki Lily was just beautiful, it wouldn't be surprising. But if she was ranked 10th on the genius list, that would be incredible. One should know that even Ding Yifan was only ranked 11th on the genius list. Aoki Lily's ranking was even higher than Ding Yifan's. Could it be that her strength was above Ding Yifan's? This was simply unimaginable. Jean DeBayo let out a weird cry and said, I almost forgot about that. Not only is Aoki Lily beautiful, but she's also extremely talented. Even Ding Yifan can't compare to her. Not only is she ranked 10th on the genius list of the Nanshan region, but she's also the adopted daughter of the president of the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce. Oh, Nietian was stunned again. He smiled and said, Then, isn't she Ding Yifan's sister? Yes. Jean DeBayo chuckled and said, I'm so envious of Ding Yifan. He actually has such a beautiful sister, and they're not related by blood. That's just... Jean DeBayo suddenly realized something. He chuckled and didn't continue speaking. Nietian couldn't help but stare at Aoki Lily for a while longer. He murmured in his heart, Aoki Lily is indeed quite powerful. I can't even tell your strength. Is there something special about your original spirit? Aoki Lily was indeed an experienced auctioneer. She didn't care about the reactions of the crowd. She smiled charmingly and said in her charming voice again, I'd like to thank everyone for taking care of the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce. It's because of everyone's support that the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce can prosper. As soon as her voice fell, the crowd cheered and jumped for joy. Then, Aoki Lily waved her hand slightly, and the crowd immediately quieted down. She smiled and said, Next, let's welcome the chief appraiser of the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce, Mr. Lin Yifang. Lin Yifang. Everyone was shocked when they heard the name. Then, the crowd applauded enthusiastically. Then, an old man with flowing silver hair appeared on the auction stage. Aoki Lily bowed slightly and made way for him. Chapter 206. Lin Yifang, an elder of the Lin family, a family of appraisers? Within the VIP lounge, upon hearing Lin Yifeng's name, Jean de Bayo immediately frowned and exclaimed in astonishment that the Yuan Chamber of Commerce is truly rich and overbearing. They actually managed to invite someone from the Lin family for an auction. De Bayo, is this old man, surnamed Lin, very powerful? Nie Tian could not help but ask when he saw the unusual reactions of the people present and Jean de Bayo. Jean de Bayo explained, "Boss, you don't know. The Lin family is a family of appraisers in the mini Samaru world. This family is completely different from the others. They do not cultivate martial arts, but instead focus on appraisal. It is said that the juniors of the Lin family do not cultivate at all. They have been exposed to all kinds of strange things since they were children. Furthermore, their origin spirits seem to be inherited from their bloodline. They have a keen perception of various martial arts techniques, ores, and medicinal herbs. They are able to appraise the grade of these items and give an accurate price. Therefore, all large auctions will invite people from the Lin family to host the auctions. This is because the price of the treasures appraised by them will always be the fairest. If there is a mistake with the items appraised by the Lin family will compensate 100 times the price. However, the items appraised by the Lin family have never been wrong." "I see." Nie Tian could not help but nod when he heard Jean de Bayo's explanation. If an origin spirit was powerful to a certain extent, it could be passed down through the bloodline. Furthermore, each generation would have a different degree of strength. The Lin family actually possessed a bloodline origin spirit that was passed down through the generations. "Who is this Lin Yifeng?" Nie Tian asked. Jean de Bayo chuckled and said, "Lin Yifeng is an inner elder of the Lin family. His attainments are quite profound. It is said that he can identify all the ancestors of an item with just a glance. There are no mistakes." "Impressive." Nie Tian nodded with a smile, feeling slightly amazed in his heart. Zhang Yifeng also knew of the Lin family. He smiled and said, "I heard that the Lin family is known as the 5th great family outside of the 4 great families of the 3,000 small worlds. To invite this old Mr. Lin Yifeng, the De Yuan Association will probably have to spend a lot of money." "The 5th great family?" Nie Tian was stunned again. Jean de Bayo chuckled and said, "Hee, it's just a casual remark from a busybody. In the past 100 years, countless families have wanted to become an existence on par with the 4 great families, but none of them succeeded. The wealth of the 4 great clans was unimaginable. Compared to them, the Lin family is still a little lacking." Jean de Bayo was right. The Lin family was still too weak to become one of the top aristocratic families. At the same time, in a VIP lounge next to Nie Tian, "Holy shit, it's Lin Yifeng." He suddenly stood up, spitting out the mouthful of tea that he had just drunk, and looked at Lin Yifeng with an exaggerated expression. "Big brother, are you all right?" Tong Fu saw Gu Yi's reaction and frowned. "Is that white-haired old man very powerful? Why can't I see it?" On the side, Shui Linglong also frowned and shook her head. She said, "With the people from the Lin family, Ding Yifeng definitely knows the value of the underground cave spirits. This time, it will be a bit difficult for teacher to bid for the underground cave spirits." "That's right." Gu Yi slapped his thigh, his face full of vexation. He had thought of this point, which was why he had such a big reaction. Ding Yifeng was really meticulous in doing things. He was actually willing to spend so much capital, even inviting Lin Yifeng over. And in another VIP lounge, not far from Nie Tian and Gu Yi, a few people had equally shocked expressions. "The people from the Lin family have appeared. Could it be that there will be some shocking item appearing in this auction?" Feng Lianqing had an astonished expression as he muttered. Mr. Purple and M.O. sure clearly did not know who Lin Yifeng was. After Feng Lianqing's explanation, they also knew the latter's identity. Could it be that the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone has really been leaked? M.O. sure frowned. In just a day, his appearance had changed again. He had grown a lot taller and matured a bit. Mr. Purple's purple clothes flowed like flames, and his expression was also not very good. In the auction house, very quickly, the auction began under Lin Yifeng's hosting. The first auction item was a rank 3 spirit weapon, Crimson Flame Spear. It was very domineering and very suitable for martial artists with fire attribute spirit origin. The price that Lin Yifeng offered was 3 low-grade origin crystals, which was very standard. I offer 10 low-grade origin crystals. I offer 20 low-grade origin crystals. A bunch of poor people. What are you doing in the auction house? Lady Lily is personally auctioning it. I offer 100 low-grade origin crystals. The voices of bidding rose and fell. Kiki Lily chuckled and said, "This Mr. offers 250 low-grade origin crystals. Is there anyone who can bid higher than him? This little girl likes tall people." It had to be said that Kiki Lily was indeed good at stirring up the atmosphere. Every frown and smile of hers, and every movement of hers, would cause the price below to skyrocket. The atmosphere of the auction house, driven by Kiki Lily, maintained its climax from beginning to end. A middle-aged martial artist with a scar on his face made up his mind and shouted, "Damn it, I'll go all out. I offer 500 low-grade origin crystals." Hearing this voice, everyone looked over in disbelief. 500 low-grade origin crystals. This idiot finally got his wish of getting the rank 3 spirit weapon, Crimson Flame Spear. The funniest thing was that this guy still had a very smug look, as if he had gotten a huge bargain. Inside the VIP lounge, Nietian could not help but frown repeatedly. These people were all like lunatics. A mere rank 3 spirit weapon, at most 10 low-grade origin crystals, but in the end, it was actually raised to 500 low-grade origin crystals. Truly outrageous. Nietian could only sigh speechlessly. Either way, he was not interested in these things. Even if it was 1 low-grade origin crystal, he was also not willing to pay. Buying something that was worth more than its value back, wasn't that an idiot? Following that, several tens of things continued to be auctioned. The price that Lin Yifeng offered each time was very fair, but after a few words of provocation from Kiki Lily, the final transaction price would all exceed the real price by several tens of times. One had to admit that Lin Yifeng and Kiki Lily worked well together. One was in charge of evaluating the price, the other was in charge of raising the price. The division of labor was clear and very reasonable. Yet, Nietian was a little tired in the VIP lounge. These things were not what he was interested in, and he unconsciously felt that it was rather boring. But he knew that the highlight of this auction was definitely at the back. The few people in the nearby VIP lounges had not called out a price yet, which meant that they were also waiting. At this time, Lin Yifeng's figure appeared on the auction stage once again, and a purple pill cauldron appeared in front of him. Lin Yifeng had a good-natured look as he introduced with a smile. Next is today's auction's 43rd auction item, a rank 5 spirit artifact, purple sun pill cauldron. Holy sh*T, it's actually a rank 5 spirit artifact. So what if it's rank 5? Too bad it's not a spirit weapon, but a pill cauldron. I'm not an alchemist, nor am I an artificer. What use do I have for it? I'm not an alchemist, but I can't buy this pill cauldron and gift it to an alchemist. The moment Lin Yifeng's words fell, there was immediately a wave of discussion below. Chapter 207. Boss, are you all right? Jean de Bayo saw Nietian's strange expression and couldn't help but ask. Although he knew that Nietian was an alchemist, a mere 5th-tier pill cauldron shouldn't be enough to make Nietian lose his composure. Zhang Yifeng also looked at Nietian, not knowing why the latter would have such a reaction towards the purple sun pill cauldron. A 5th-tier pill cauldron was undoubtedly precious and very attractive to alchemists, but with Nietian's mental fortitude, even a 7th-tier pill cauldron wouldn't be like this. Intuition told Zhang Yifeng that there was definitely something fishy about this. Nothing much. Nietian reacted, but only smiled faintly and didn't say much. The reason why he was so interested in the purple sun pill cauldron was because this pill cauldron was personally refined by him. Nietian still remembered that the purple sun pill cauldron was the first 5th-tier spiritual weapon he refined when he became a 5th-tier alchemist. And he had used the purple sun pill cauldron as his pill refining vessel for many years. So when the purple sun pill cauldron appeared, Nietian's expression turned sluggish. He didn't know why the purple sun pill cauldron would appear in the 3,000 small worlds, but seeing the purple sun pill cauldron before his eyes made Nye Tian recall many past events. On the auction stage, Lin Yifeng gently stroked the purple sun pill cauldron and smiled faintly. The purple sun pill cauldron is a genuine 5th-tier spiritual weapon, and there are even and clear purple cauldron markings on the inside of the cauldron. This old man concludes that this cauldron was formed after a long period of purple fire burning. Looking at the clear and distinct markings, this pill cauldron must have been used by an alchemist master before. According to this old man's speculation, this alchemist master's alchemy skills are very high, at least a 7th-tier alchemist. 7th-tier alchemist. The moment Lin Yifeng said this, there was a burst of exclamations below. A 7th-tier alchemist, this was already an amazing existence. Even in the entire 3,000 small worlds, there wasn't a single 7th-tier alchemist. Nye Tian looked at Lin Yifeng and smiled faintly, saying in his heart, the Lin family's people are indeed worthy of having a primordial spirit bloodline. They indeed live up to their reputation. To be able to guess the user's alchemy attainments just by looking at the cauldron pattern, truly impressive. What Lin Yifeng said was very right. When Nye Tian abandoned the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron, he was already an 8th-ranked pill master. Moreover, he had indeed used the 51st-ranked Netherworld Purple Flame on the Devil Fire list. The people of the Lin clan were not simple. Lin Yifeng waved her hand, indicating for them to be quiet, and continued, our mini-summer world doesn't have any 7th-tier alchemists. So this old man guessed that the previous owner of the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron was most likely an important person from the world above. However, this is not the most important thing. The most important thing is that this old man can sense a true intent of alchemy and a true intent of martial arts from the Purple Yang Pill Cauldron. It must be left behind by that important figure in the Purple Yang Pill Cauldron, waiting for a fated person to obtain it. True meaning of Pill Dao. True intent of martial Dao. Lin Yifeng's words almost made the people below boil with excitement. It's actually used by a great character from the world above. It's really strange. Something that possesses both the true meaning of alchemy and the true meaning of martial Dao. Oh my God, there really is such a heaven-defying thing. True intent of martial Dao, I really sensed it. This is simply a gift bestowed to me by the heavens. True meaning of alchemy and true meaning of martial Dao. Even if your father has to go bankrupt and pawn off my underwear, I also want to buy the Purple Yang Pill Cauldron. Stop bullshitting. This is a pill cauldron. Will those alchemists let go? Who doesn't know that what alchemists lack the least is money? The people below seethed intensely, and all sorts of bootlicking words came out. In the VIP lounge, Nye Tian's brows also furrowed again and again. He did not think that this Lin Yifeng was actually so heaven-defying to actually sense the true intent of alchemy and martial Dao that he once left on the Purple Yang Pill Cauldron. Martial artists cultivated in defiance of the heavenly Dao. When they were powerful to a certain extent, such as reaching the heavenly emperor realm, they could comprehend the true intent of martial Dao and condense the true intent into a corporeal form, storing it inside the spirit artifact. But Nye Tian was only trying it out at that time. Who knew that he really succeeded? Originally, he thought that no matter how powerful Lin Yifeng was, it was impossible to sense the existence of true intent of alchemy and martial Dao. He still underestimated Lin Yifeng too much. This time, things were a little troublesome. If Nye Tian wanted to take back the Purple Yang Pill Cauldron, he would probably have to pay a heavy price. Teacher, are you interested in the Purple Yang Pill Cauldron? Zhang Yifeng could not help asking when he saw Nye Tian shake his head repeatedly. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, I'm preparing to buy the Purple Yang Pill Cauldron and give it to you as a gift. Nye Tian wanted to take back the Purple Yang Pill Cauldron. Of course, it was not for his own use, but for Zhang Yifeng. Zhang Yifeng was Nye Tian's personal disciple. After all, leaving the true intent of alchemy and martial Dao within the Purple Yang Pill Cauldron to him was also considered keeping the goodies within the family. But from the looks of it, the crowd outside would definitely be frantically fighting over the purple yang pill cauldron. Coupled with the alluring greenwood lily adding fuel to the fire, the purple yang pill cauldron would probably be sold for a sky-high price. When Zhang Yifeng heard that Nie Tian wanted to give the purple yang pill cauldron to him, he was so excited that he nearly cried. He hurriedly said, "Thank you, teacher." When he heard Lin Yifeng's introduction of the purple yang pill cauldron, Zhang Yifeng was naturally moved. But since Nie Tian showed great interest, he did not dare to snatch something from his teacher. Nie Tian smiled faintly and said to Jean de Bayo, get the purple yang pill cauldron later, no matter how much it costs, regardless of the cost. All right, Jean de Bayo readily agreed. He had the Dayuan Bank's gold card with 500,000 middle-grade essence crystals, so he was already impatient. But Nie Tian knew that it would not be easy to get the purple yang pill cauldron. Since he was interested, the other alchemy masters were naturally interested as well. Lin Yifeng saw that the crowd was boiling over, and her lips curled into a faint smile. She immediately waved her hand to signal for silence and said, "Everyone, please calm down. This purple yang pill cauldron is one of the treasures of this auction. An ordinary 5th-grade spirit weapon is priced at 1,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals. But the purple yang pill cauldron is not an ordinary weapon. It also contains the true meaning of alchemy and martial arts. This old man values it at 10,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals." After Lin Yifeng finished speaking, she glanced at Greenwood Lily. The latter smiled and said in a charming voice, "Lily has already felt everyone's enthusiasm. Now everyone please start the bidding." Lin Yifeng introduced the purple yang pill cauldron in detail, saving Greenwood Lily a lot of trouble. At this moment, even if she did not say anything, the entire crowd would definitely be boiling over. When Greenwood Lily's voice fell, the entire crowd was dead silent. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, as if they were pondering something. Anyone could see that a storm of bidding was about to come. "I bid 10,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals." After a short period of dead silence, someone was finally the first to bid. It was a muscular man with a full beard. "F***CK your poor ass. You only bid 10,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals. Are you looking down on the true meaning of martial arts? I bid 20,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals." Before he had finished speaking, a young man in his 20s stood up and shouted loudly, "I bid 30,000 pieces of low-grade essence crystals." Following that, someone bid even higher. Following that, the sounds of bidding rose and fell and did not stop. Chapter 208. 430,000 low-grade essence crystals. Jean de Bayo's forehead was covered in sweat. Although he was mentally prepared, he didn't think that a small cauldron could cause such a frenzy of bidding. Originally, Jean de Bayo thought that at most 100,000 low-grade essence crystals would be enough to win it. Mother F***er, this group of people are all F***king crazy. Is it worth it for a broken cauldron? Jean de Bayo wiped the cold sweat off his forehead as he cursed. And that bastard, why did he put a true meaning of alchemy or martial Tao in a cauldron for no reason? Isn't he just looking for trouble? He really has nothing better to do. Nie Tian was speechless. He frowned at Jean de Bayo and could only say in his heart, "De Bayo, that bastard who has nothing better to do is your boss." Zhang Yifeng also didn't expect this and said, "Teacher, forget about the purple sun pill cauldron. Student doesn't want it." If the purple sun pill cauldron was bought for tens of thousands of low-grade essence crystals, it was fine. But if the price was too high, Zhang Yifeng felt embarrassed. No matter, let them bid. The purple sun pill cauldron is a gift from Master. How can I go back on my words? Nie Tian waved his hand and smiled. Nie Tian didn't care about money. What was the use of having more money? It was paper if he couldn't spend it. Anyway, he had 500,000 mid-grade essence crystals. He could play around with it. Zhang Yifeng saw Nie Tian's indifferent face and didn't say anything else, but he was grateful in his heart. In the auction, the bidding went crazy. Ao Kiki Eureka laughed so hard that she was shaking. Linny Fong was also grinning from ear to ear. The more intense the bidding, the happier they were. As the price got higher, the voices of the bidding became fewer and fewer. I bid 601,000 low-grade essence crystals. A youth in fine clothes stood up. It was none other than the seventh prince of the Sun, Chu Empire, Gongsheng. But his expression didn't look too good. This price was probably the limit of what he could afford. His Highness Gongsheng of the Sun Chu Empire has bid 601,000 low-grade origin crystals. Is there anyone who has bid higher than him? Aoki Eureka smiled brightly at Gongsheng, her sweet voice resounding in everyone's ears. 600,000 low-grade yuan spirits. This price was already too high. It was far beyond what most of the people present could afford. Even if some people were willing to sell their entire fortune for underwear, the underwear wouldn't be worth much. At the crucial moment, it was still the royal family that had the foundation and was willing to pay the price. The whole place was silent. No one dared to bid again. Even if the alchemy masters were rich, there was still a limit to how much they could afford. 600,000 low-grade essence spirits had already exceeded their limit. DeBeo. In the VIP room, Nietian signaled to Jean DeBeo. It was time for them to bid. Cough, cough. Jean DeBeo coughed twice, walked out of the VIP lounge, and shouted, I bid 601 low-grade origin crystals. 01 yuan. As soon as Jean DeBeo said this, everyone's gazes turned to him. They all had strange expressions on their faces. Jean DeBeo roused himself and said, What? Isn't it allowed? Aoki Lily was slightly taken aback. When she saw Jean DeBeo coming out of the VIP lounge, she immediately smiled charmingly and said, Oh, of course. This young master bid 601 low-grade essence crystals. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? In the VIP lounge, Nietian also broke out in a cold sweat. He didn't think that Jean DeBeo would actually add a low-grade origin crystal. It was really hard for him to shout out. To think that Jean DeBeo was the son of the richest man in the Blue Cloud Empire. Gongsheng looked at Jean DeBeo and obviously recognized him. He was instantly stunned and looked at the latter suspiciously. To think that he, a dignified Sun Empire's prince, couldn't even get a VIP lounge, but Jean DeBeo and the others were actually in the VIP lounge. There was really no justice in this world. At this time, Gongsheng couldn't help but guess the real relationship between Nietian and Ding Yifan. However, Gongsheng didn't want to give up on the purple sun pill cauldron. He immediately shouted, I bid 602 low-grade origin crystals. As soon as he said this, the scene instantly vomited blood. Jean DeBeo and Gongsheng added one low-grade origin crystal at a time. Wasn't this a joke? Jean DeBeo chuckled and was just about to bid again when a young lady walked out from the box next door. That young lady walked out and glared at Jean DeBeo fiercely. She put on a very disdainful face and then said proudly, This princess bids 700,000 low-grade origin crystals. When the people below saw the young lady's face clearly, they started discussing. Wow, it's the Water Crow Empire's princess, Shui Linglong. I heard that Princess Shui Linglong is a Tier 2 alchemist. She's only 14 years old this year, but her mental strength is freakish. I reckon that she bought this purple sun pill cauldron for herself. The Water Crow Empire is rich. Her Highness the Little Princess casually added close to 100,000 low-grade origin crystals. Much better than these two fellows who bid one piece at a time. The Little Princess is a real man. This young lady who looked down on Jean DeBeo was precisely Gu Yi's little disciple, Shui Linglong. Hearing the discussions below, Shui Linglong smiled proudly. She snorted provocatively at Jean DeBeo and immediately walked into the box. Teacher, is the purple sun pill cauldron really worth 700,000 low-grade origin crystals? If I buy it back and it's not worth it, Father Emperor will scold me again. Shui Linglong called out the price confidently. However, when she returned to the box, she was a bit worried about Gu Yi. She pouted her small mouth and said worriedly. Gu Yi laughed mischievously and said, Little girl, you still don't believe in your teacher's words? If your father dares to scold you, your teacher will scold him for you. Teacher will keep to his words. Shui Linglong smiled proudly. She wasn't worried at all. And outside, Jean DeBayo and Gong Sheng were both startled. They didn't expect that a little girl would suddenly appear out of nowhere. And furthermore, she was so ferocious. Aoki Lily, however, was very happy. She smiled brilliantly and said loudly, Princess Shui Linglong bids 700,000 low-grade origin crystals. Is there anyone else who wants to bid? Sigh. Gong Sheng let out a long sigh, then sat down and directly gave up. Jean DeBayo turned his head around and took a look at Nie Tian. Nie Tian was currently whispering into Zhang Yifeng's ear. Zhang Yifeng walked out of the VIP room and shouted, I bid 100,000 mid-grade origin crystals. Jean DeBayo looked at Zhang Yifeng speechlessly, as if he didn't know Zhang Yifeng at all. Zhang Yifeng pointed at Nie Tian, indicating that it was teacher who told me to bid. Nie Tian smiled faintly towards Jean DeBayo, looking like he didn't care at all. Boss, you're really a prodigal. Jean DeBayo's chubby face puffed up as he said in his heart. Jean DeBayo suddenly recalled that when Nie Yuro asked Nie Tian how long it would take for him to finish spending so much money, Nie Tian said that it would be very soon. Seems like Nie Tian wasn't joking at all. According to this way of spending, not only would it be very soon, it would be very soon. Suddenly hearing the bid of 100,000 mid-grade origin crystals, everyone went into a daze. Everyone looked at Zhang Yifeng blankly. If not for the latter's serious expression, they would have thought that he was a madman who ran out from a mental hospital. 100,000 mid-grade origin crystals. That was 1 million low-grade origin crystals. That was exactly 1 million low-grade origin crystals. Directly increasing the bid by 300,000 low-grade origin crystals. Is he so rich that he has nowhere else to spend it? Chapter 209. Even after Aoki Lily's voice fell, Shui Linglong in the VIP room was still in a daze and did not react. Linglong girl, the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron has been won by someone. Tong Fu shouted, and Shui Linglong seemed to wake up from a dream. Gu Yi could only shake his head with a bitter smile and said, Since someone has set their eyes on the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron, there is nothing we can do about it. If this person can completely comprehend and absorb the true meaning of alchemy and martial path in the cauldron, it will be worth 100,000 mid-grade yuan crystals. If not, it will be a big loss. Hearing Gu Yi's words, Shui Linglong's fragile heart felt slightly relieved. Jean DeBayo and Zhang Yifeng returned to the VIP room. Nie Tian still had a calm smile on his face, as if nothing had happened. Jean DeBayo felt his heart ache. He looked at Nie Tian unhappily and sighed, Prodigal. Nie Tian was also speechless. This son of the richest man was extremely stingy. After a while, Qiu Shan and the others returned to the VIP room. They knew that Nie Tian had won the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron and were very excited. Xiu Ling returned to the VIP room and glared at Jean DeBayo fiercely. She said, Damn fatty, it's just a piece of low-grade yuan crystal. How can you have a nerve to shout it out? Jean DeBayo smiled and said, A thin stream flows for a long time. A thin stream flows for a long time. The commotion caused by the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron finally settled. In the end, Nie Tian still took back the pill cauldron. After a few dozen boring auctions, Nie Tian was on the verge of falling asleep. After a while, Lin Yifeng, who was on the auction stage, suddenly laughed loudly with a somewhat crazy expression. She said as if there was no one else present, I didn't expect it to be an ancient saber technique. It's really rare. Lin Yifeng held an ancient scroll in her hand. Although it looked very dilapidated, it seemed to have a very mysterious martial paths, true meaning flowing within it. Any martial technique, even the lowest grade, would definitely contain the true meaning of the martial way. It was precisely because of the existence of the true meaning of the martial way that martial techniques were not easy to replicate. Unless one was a heavenly emperor powerhouse, it was very difficult to replicate a martial technique. Lin Yifeng looked at the martial art manual in her hand in a daze. It seemed like it was an extremely rare martial art manual. When this martial art manual appeared, Qiu Shan, who was beside Nietan, suddenly had a change in expression. He exclaimed, "What a familiar aura!" Nietan spread out his divine sense and frowned slightly. The martial true intent on the scroll seemed to have some similarities with Qiu Shan's saber chi. Could it be a remnant of Qiu Shan's blade art? Nietan suddenly remembered that Qiu Shan's blade art was a remnant, but he never mentioned it. The aura of the martial intent in Lin Yifang's martial art was connected to Qiu Shan's saber chi. The two clearly had a close connection. "Qiu Shan, don't get agitated." Nietan motioned for Qiu Shan to calm down and not show too much. "Yes." Qiu Shan nodded heavily, suppressing all the excitement in his heart. He was already very sure that the blade technique in Lin Yifang's hands was the second half of the world-defying wild blade technique that he was cultivating. The world-defying wild blade technique was the martial art that Qiu Shan's grandfather had left him, but he only had the first half of it, so he didn't know what level it was. He had once bitterly searched for the second half of the scroll, but to no avail. Who would have thought that the heavens would not disappoint those who were willing, and finally let him see the second half of the world-defying wild blade technique in this auction? If Qiu Shan could obtain the second half of the world-defying wild blade technique, his strength would have a qualitative increase, and his cultivation speed would also increase. Although he had only cultivated the first half of the world-defying wild blade technique, the speed of the great circulation in his body was faster than the average martial artist, so he guessed that the level of the world-defying wild blade technique must be very high, at least Earth rank. But Qiu Shan never knew where the world-defying wild blade technique came from, and his grandfather never told him. Although Qiu Shan's surname was Qiu, he was only a servant of the Qiu clan, and his grandfather's surname was Yi. When he was 4 years old, he suddenly left and changed his name from Yishan to Qiu Shan. His own background had always been a secret that Qiu Shan wanted to explore, and his grandfather, he didn't know if he was still alive. On the auction stage, Lin Yifang gradually calmed down and immediately smiled. "Everyone, the next item to be auctioned is a remnant of a martial art, and it is also another treasure of this auction." Remnant of a martial art? What's there to auction? That's right. Since it is a remnant, there is no way to cultivate it. Even if you forcefully cultivate it, you will definitely be restricted in the later stages, so you might as well not cultivate it. Old Mr. Lin, forget about the remnant of a martial art. Let's auction the next one. Hearing that it was a remnant of a martial art, the people below were obviously unhappy, and they all shouted. Lin Yifang, however, smiled faintly and continued to speak with a kind expression. "Everyone, listen to this old man. Although this martial art is a remnant, its level is very high. If this old man is not wrong, this should be a heaven-rank martial art." "My dear mother, a heaven-rank martial art? Impossible! Isn't a heaven-rank martial art only in the 4 great clans? Old Mr. Lin can't be bluffing, right?" "Bluff your sister. Old Mr. Lin is an inner elder of the Lin clan, and the Lin clan is the 5th clan outside of the 4 great clans. Do you think the Lin clan's name can be easily bluffed? If you speak so casually again, be careful of your tone." The heaven-rank martial art caused the people below to go crazy. Lin Yifang waved his hand and said, "The martial art in this old man's hands is a remnant of a saber art called the world-defying wild saber art. Maybe you all do not know, but 80 years ago in the 3,000 small worlds, there was a heaven-defying swordsman named Yi Linyun, and he cultivated the world-defying wild saber art. This person was called the world-defying wild saber, and with the world-defying wild saber art, Yi Linyun once stepped into Sumi Ling City and challenged the various geniuses of Sumi Ling City. Although he lost in the end, it was still a glorious defeat." Speaking to this point, Lin Yifang's face revealed a look of regret, and he sighed. But after that, no one knows what happened to this person, but like a mystery, he suddenly disappeared. In the 3,000 small worlds, there is no trace of the wild saber. Lin Yifang seemed to be telling a story. Although it was just a few words, it caused the hearts of the people below to itch. Someone below shouted, "Old Mr. Lin, who defeated that Yi Linyan in the end. Is it the current Tang family's patriarch, Lord Tang Hao, or the Mo family's patriarch, Lord Mo Zhaojing?" That's right. That's right. Who defeated Yi Linyan. The Tang family's patriarch, Tang Hao, and the Mo family's patriarch, Mo Zhaojing. These two people were known as the two peaks of the 3,000 small worlds, representing the strongest battle power. Therefore, everyone felt that if there was someone who could defeat Yi Linyan in Sumi Ling City 80 years ago, it would definitely be either Tang Hao or Mo Zhaojing. However, Lin Yifeng shook his head and said, "I can't say this. I can only tell everyone that the person who defeated Yi Linyan back then was not Lord Tang Hao, nor was it Lord Mo Zhaojing, but someone else." Someone else. Who could it be? Everyone was stunned and began to make wild guesses in their hearts. And in the VIP room, when Xiushan heard Lin Yifeng's words, he was completely stunned. Chapter 210. Xiushan's gaze fell on the Ling Yun ring on his hand. His eyes revealed an extremely complicated expression. It was unknown whether it was anger or something else. The ring that Xiushan's grandfather left him was the Ling Yun ring. So without a doubt, his grandfather was the former world-defying Wildblade, Yi Linyan. What exactly happened to Yi Linyan back then? Why did he become a servant in the Qiu clan? And why did he only have half a scroll of Wild World-defying blade mantra? All these mysteries were like a dark cloud pressing down on Xiushan's heart, making it hard for him to breathe. Xiushan. Nietian suddenly stood up and put a hand on Xiushan's shoulder. "Calm down." Xiushan forced himself to calm down, forcing himself not to think too much. In fact, Xiushan had always been curious. He didn't even know the sect leader of the Transformation God sect, Dongfang Yu. Why would the latter want to harm him? Now that he thought about it, perhaps there was a bigger secret behind all this. No matter what the secret was, Xiushan had to unravel it. On the auction stage, Lin Yifeng whetted everyone's appetite and laughed. Everyone. The violent world-defying saber technique is a heaven-ranked martial technique. However, the one in my hand is only half a scroll, and, unfortunately, it's the second half. That's why it's even more difficult to cultivate, unless you're a peerless sword genius. Otherwise, it would be very difficult to successfully cultivate it. The violent world-defying saber technique is a priceless treasure, but there is only half of volume. So this old man will treat it as a high-grade, profound rank martial technique for sale. The estimated price is 100,000 low-grade origin crystals. Lin Yifeng valued the wild world-defying blade technique at 100,000 low-grade origin crystals, which was a reasonable price. Although the violent world-defying saber technique with a heaven-ranked martial technique, it was only half a volume. Furthermore, it was the second half. The cultivation value was too low. It could almost be said that without the first half, the second half was just a decoration. It could not be cultivated at all, unless one was a peerless martial arts genius who could automatically make up for the incomplete saber technique. Therefore, the violent world-defying saber technique was more of a collection. It was valued at 100,000 low-grade yuan crystals, which was very normal. From this aspect, it could be seen that Lin Yifeng was a relatively kind person. After Lin Yifeng finished speaking, she immediately glanced at Ao Kiki Lily. The latter immediately understood and smiled. Everyone, the violent world-defying saber art, is a heaven-ranked martial technique. Everyone here is a major character. Perhaps you might accidentally become a genius of the saber Dao. Or perhaps your relatives have some talent in the way of the blade. If they were to cultivate the world-defying stage wild blade technique, they might be able to be like Senior Yi Linyan back then, stepping into the Shumi Spirit Capital and challenging the various geniuses of the Shumi Spirit Capital. It had to be said that Aoki Eureka really knew how to speak. After hearing her words, those who were originally not interested in the world-defying wild blade technique immediately became spirited. But spirit was spirit. 100,000 low-grade essence crystals was indeed not a small number. There were not many people who cultivated the sword Dao to begin with, even fewer than those who specialized in the sword Dao. Therefore, no one bid for it even after a long time. Something like the wild world-defying blade technique was too useful to useful people and too useless to useless people. Unfortunately, everyone present thought that the wild world-defying blade technique was useless. When Yetian saw that it was about time, he smiled faintly and gestured to Jean de Bayo. Jean de Bayo immediately understood and walked out of the VIP lounge. However, he shouted, "Lady Eureka, no one has bid for it for so long. Why don't you lower the price?" Puffed. Hearing Jean de Bayo's words, Yetian spat out a mouthful of tea. This fatty was too stingy. He was simply unworthy of his wide body. Aoki Eureka smiled brightly and said, "This young master really knows how to joke. The world-defying wild blade technique is a heaven-ranked martial technique. If no one knows what it is, then Artie Yuan Association can only keep it for now." Seeing that he could not lower the price, Jean de Bayo could only endure the pain and say, "All right then, this young master will bid 100,000 low-grade essence crystals." Aoki Eureka smiled faintly. Immediately, it was like a peach blossom had bloomed. The fatty almost lost his footing and was dragged back by Chiolinger. The world-defying wild blade technique was once again won by Nyetian. Furthermore, it was surprisingly smooth. Under the circumstances where there was no competition, he easily obtained it. After Takagi Lily's voice faded, Chioshan bowed towards Nyetian and said sincerely, "Many thanks, Mr. Nya." Nyetian smiled faintly. He was also very happy to be able to obtain the world-defying wild blade technique for Chioshan. After obtaining the second half of the world-defying wild blade technique, Chioshan's strength would undoubtedly increase qualitatively. This was something that Nyetian was happy to see. Following this, the auction continued. Nyetian had been paying attention, hoping that some natural treasure would appear, something that could help Jean de Bayo restrain the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons. Unfortunately, up until now, he still hadn't discovered it. After all, this was the 3,000 small worlds. Those tier 9 herbs could only be found by luck. The 3,000 seals of the gods and demons were one of the 10 strongest seals. According to legend, even tier 9 herbs could only restrain a tier 10 seal for a while. Whether or not he could completely control the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons depended on Jean de Bayo himself. If he could reach the Heavenly Emperor realm before the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons were completely unsealed, he would naturally be able to control the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons. However, if he could not, his life would be in danger at any time. However, the current Jean de Bayo did not have to worry about the backlash of the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons for the time being. The 3,000 seals of the gods and demons had previously sealed more than 10 corpse puppets. Nyetian had refined the purple dragon whisker not long ago and fed it to Jean de Bayo. Within a few months, Jean de Bayo would be able to easily suppress the 3,000 seals of the gods and demons. If his strength increased fast enough, he could even guarantee that he would be safe and sound for a year. The auction continued, and shouts rang out one after another. Aoki Lily was really energetic. The entire auction lasted for almost an entire day, but she was still smiling like a flower, as if she had just appeared. Very quickly, the auction was nearing its end, but the cave elves that Nyetian had been looking forward to had yet to appear. This made him wonder if Ding Yifan had no intention of auctioning the cave elves at all. In the VIP room near Nyetian, Gu-Yi was carefully sipping his tea, not worried at all. Ding Yifan had already told him that the cave elves would be auctioned publicly, so he was naturally relieved. No matter how strong Ding Yifan was, no matter how high his status was, he would never dare to make fun of the red-shirt elder of the Alchemist Guild. In another VIP room not far away, Feng Lianqing could not wait any longer and wanted to leave. However, Emo Shi and Mr. Z looked indifferent, as if they were waiting for something. Emo Shi had already sensed that the owner of White Flame was in the auction house, and he knew that the owner of White Flame had not left for a long time, so she must be waiting for something to be auctioned. Since the owner of White Flame was interested in this thing, Emo Shi could not help but be a little interested. The owner of White Flame referred to Gu-Yi who had merged with White Flame's fire tongue. The real identity of Mo Sure and Mr. Z was the original body of Doomsday Flame and the strongest clone, Purple Flame's fire tongue. Of Mo Sure's two clones, one was merged with Gu E, and the other was devoured by Nyetion. However, what puzzled him was that he could only sense the existence of White Flame, while Red Flame had no aura at all, as if he had disappeared in a thin air. At this moment, there was finally movement in the auction house. Two beautiful maids in revealing clothes appeared, carrying a heavy box. The box was covered with a layer of black cloth, as if it was something dangerous. Chapter 211. On the auction platform, two beautiful female attendants put down the large chests, smiled brightly, and left. When the people below the stage saw the big box suddenly appear on the auction stage, they immediately started discussing. What is this thing? It's so mysterious. Looks like it's the highlight of this auction. I reckon it will be a priceless treasure of heaven and earth. Yeah, I think so too. It's such a big box, even a person can fit inside. Lin Yifeng smiled kindly and waved her hand at the people below the stage. Immediately, the crowd quieted down. She said, "Everyone, this is the last auction item of this auction, and also the highlight of this auction." After saying that, Lin Yifeng directly lifted the black cloth. Everyone looked closely. Under the black cloth was not a box, but an iron cage, and inside the iron cage was a girl in tattered clothes. Although she was a girl, her appearance was very different from a girl's. She had pointed ears, a rough face, gray eyes, and a petite body, but it was obvious that she was an adult woman. The strangest thing was that her palms and soles of her feet were extraordinarily large. Compared to her body, they were even more exaggerated. Her gray eyes were wide open, looking very frightened. She curled up in a corner of the cage, as if that would make her feel safer. "Boss, it's her. The person I saw that day is her." In the VIP room, Jean de Bayo said excitedly. Nyetion just nodded, his face somewhat gloomy. In fact, Nyetion was very opposed to the practice of treating other races as slaves or even animals. When he was in the heaven realm, he had once worked to restore the status of the elves and dwarves. Therefore, among his 9 great disciples, there was not only one dwarf, but also one elf. Unfortunately, the people of the world were very prejudiced and would not treat other races equally. Therefore, until now, dwarves, elves, beastmen, and demons were all treated as slaves. In fact, this was also a manifestation of the law of the jungle. If in the ancient war between races, it was the humans who lost, then the humans now would also be treated as slaves by other races. It really is a crypt elf. In the VIP room, Gu Yi stood up excitedly. He was very sure that the person in the iron cage on the auction stage was a crypt elf. Although Gu Yi had never seen a crypt elf, he had done some research on it, so he could conclude. "Big brother, that's impossible. Elves are all ugly and tall. How could she be an elf when she's so beautiful? She must be a fellow dwarf." Tong Fu looked suspiciously at the crypt elf in the cage, unable to conceal the anger on his face. "Teacher, could there be a mistake? The person in the cage couldn't be an elf. I heard that elves are very beautiful, very graceful. This person, no matter how I look at him, he doesn't look like an elf at all." Shui Linglong tightly knitted her brows and said. Although Tong Fu and Shui Linglong's words were different, they actually meant the same thing. That is, the cave spirit in the auction booth was not like an elf, but more like a dwarf. Indeed, the impression that elves gave people was that they were perfect and exquisite. As for the cave elves, they were different from other elves. They looked more like dwarves. If the one in the cage was a wood elf or a blue elf, Tong Fu would definitely say that it was extremely ugly. Dwarves had a different sense of beauty compared to humans and elves, but it couldn't be helped. It's a crypt elf. In another VIP room, Mo Sure and Mr. Z suddenly stood up and exclaimed at the same time. Their faces revealed a panicked expression. Crypt elf. Feng Lianxing was astonished. He didn't know why Mo Sure and Mr. Z were suddenly so panicked. Feng Lianxing had never seen Mo Sure and Mr. Z panic before. This was the first time. This undoubtedly meant that the fellow in the iron cage on the auction booth was definitely not simple. Mo Sure and Mr. Z looked at each other and understood in their hearts that the secret of the dragon bloodstone had been leaked. They weren't the only ones who knew that Tianluo Mountain had the dragon bloodstone. Feng Lianxing, bid for the crypt elf at all costs, Mo Sure said solemnly. His tone carried a determination that couldn't be disobeyed. Yes. Feng Lianxing was stunned at first, but then he nodded solemnly. And in the auction hall, the appearance of the crypt elf caused everyone to discuss it. What's that thing? A dwarf? It seems to be a dwarf, but it's actually a female. I didn't expect there to be a female dwarf in the dwarf race. Are you stupid? Without a female dwarf, how can the dwarf race reproduce? Why would they reproduce with you? No one had seen a crypt elf before, but many people had seen a dwarf, so most people thought that the crypt elf was a dwarf. In the dwarf race, female dwarves and male dwarves didn't have much difference in appearance. They both had thick beards, so very few people could distinguish the gender of dwarves. They always thought that there were no female dwarves. Everyone couldn't understand why the finale of the Yuan Chamber of Commerce's auction was actually a dwarf. What did this mean? Although dwarves were relatively rare, they obviously couldn't compare to those high-grade spirit weapons and spirit pills. Lin Yifeng chuckled and waved her hand again. The auction hall immediately quietened down. Everyone, the one in the cage, isn't a dwarf, but an elf, a very rare crypt elf. Lin Yifeng said, although crypt elves look similar to dwarves, they're indeed an elf. The one in the cage is an elf? Am I seeing things? It's really blinding my purple gold dog eyes. It can't be an elf. I heard that elves are super beauties who don't eat the food of the mortal world. Damn, is there such an ugly elf? If not for old Mr. Lin saying that she's an elf, I wouldn't believe it even if you beat me to death. There was a hubbub of discussion below the stage. Lin Yifeng only smiled faintly. This time, he didn't explain too much and just said, everyone, crypt elves are very rare. This old man estimates that they are worth 100,000 low-grade spirit stones. Of course, Lin Yifeng knew the value of crypt elves. Not only were they master refiners, but they also had a very keen perception of almost all ores. They could even sense mineral deposits thousands of meters underground. If a mining team could obtain a crypt elf, the mining cost would be reduced by at least half. But Ding Yifeng specifically reminded Lin Yifeng not to introduce the crypt elf too much. Although she didn't know why Ding Yifeng did this, Lin Yifeng still obeyed him. After all, this was the Yuan Chamber of Commerce's auction hall. Ding Yifeng didn't let Lin Yifeng reveal the value of the crypt elf because he wanted to see who was interested in it. All right, everyone, let's start the auction. This time, not only was Lin Yifeng's introduction brief, even Aoki Lily only smiled faintly and didn't say anything else. At this time, in a VIP room, Ding Yifeng sat upright with an unconcealable smile on his face, as if he was waiting for something. Chapter 212. Lin Yifeng and Aoki Lily started the bidding for the crypt elf so succinctly, which made the people below feel a little uncomfortable. Everyone was already used to listening to Lin Yifeng's introduction, and then Aoki Eureka would fan the flames, and then the auction would set off a frenzy of bidding. Now that it had suddenly started, it seemed like something was missing. Almost no one knew the value of a crypt elf, so no one raised their hands to bid. Young master, no one knows what a crypt spirit is. If Senior Lin doesn't introduce it, I'm afraid it won't fetch a high price, Ding Xiaofeng said with a puzzled look on his face. Ding Yifeng smiled faintly and said, who said I'm going to let the crypt elves sell for a high price? Young master, this subordinate is slow-witted. I don't know what young master means. Ding Xiaofeng was at a loss. The crypt sprites are just bait. I just want to know who is interested in the crypt sprites, Ding Yifeng said leisurely. This king offers 100,000 low-grade origin crystals. Finally, Feng Lianxing couldn't sit still anymore. He was the first to walk out and raise his hand. The moment Feng Lianxing appeared, someone immediately recognized him, and it immediately caused a commotion. Wasn't that the Fengqin Empire's King Binyan? He also came to the auction. King Consort, Could it be the Feng Qin Empire's Lord Feng Lianqing, who can stand shoulder to shoulder with the Emperor? Of course it's him. Other than Lord Feng Lianqing, who else dares to call themselves the king equal? Feng Lianqing was very famous, and there were many people who knew him. In the Wen Qin Empire, he was known as the king who stood side by side. This meant that he could stand side by side with the emperor and did not need to lower his head. Aokiki Lily's bewitching eyes swept across Feng Lianqing as a smear of surprise flashed across her eyes. Shortly after, she sweetly smiled and yelled, "Lord Feng Lianqing of the Feng Qin Empire has bid 100,000 lower-grade origin crystals. Is there anyone who has bid higher than him?" Her enchanting voice drilled into everyone's ears. Instantly, many men felt their hearts itch. Aokiki Lily was simply a temptress. With every frown, smile, and gesture, she exuded a peerlessly enchanting aura. It's actually someone from the Wen Qin Empire. Ding Yifan couldn't conceal his shock. He obviously didn't expect that other than Gu, Yi, and Yetian, someone from the Wen Qin Empire would suddenly appear. On the other side, Gu Yi was similarly extremely surprised, and he said with astonishment, "This old one hasn't seen Feng Lianqing for many years. When did this bastard know the value of the crypt spirits?" Gu Yi originally wanted to wait for an awkward silence, for everyone to stop bidding, and then he would be able to win easily. Who would have thought that Feng Lianqing would appear out of nowhere? "I bid 200,000 low-grade origin crystals." However, in the next moment, before Gu Yi could react, another voice resounded out. "It's him again." Countless pairs of eyes stared at Zhang Yifeng, feeling extremely shocked. Where did this brat come from? Just now, the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron was taken away by Zhang Yifeng, and the world-defying Wild Blade technique was also taken away by the fatty in the same VIP room. Now that he had come out to snatch the crypt spirit, it attracted a lot of attention. This was especially true for the seventh prince of the Empire of Richu. When he realized that Zhang Yifeng was one of Nietian's men, he gnashed his teeth in hatred. A sinister smile appeared on his face as he made up his mind. "Bastards, didn't you guys get the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron? Later, as long as I leave Danwu City, all these things will belong to this prince. And that woman, this prince will not let her off either." Gong Sheng's face was gloomy as he said in his heart. Until now, he still believed that Nietian was under Ding Yifan's protection. Hence, he was prepared to make his move after Nietian and the others left Danwu City. Zhang Yifeng bidding for the crypt spirit was, of course, Nietian's intention. Nietian really couldn't stand Jean de Bao's stinginess, so he let Zhang Yifeng bid. Aoki Lily glanced at Zhang Yifeng from afar. A hint of doubt flashed in her eyes, but it disappeared soon after. She smiled charmingly and said, "This young master bids 200,000 low-grade origin crystals." Aoki Lily seemed to be thinking about something, but she didn't show it and covered it up very well. 300,000 low-grade origin crystals. Feng Lianqing glared at Zhang Yifeng and roared angrily. Originally, Feng Lianqing thought that once his identity as the Wen Qin Empire's side-shoulder king was exposed, others would not dare to compete with him. Now that a brat popped out, it naturally made him unhappy. Who is this brat? To actually dare to compete with the Wen Qin Empire's side-shoulder king for something. Is he tired of living? Shoo! Softer, don't let people hear. People who can get a VIP room in the Great Yuan Merchant Association. Which one of them isn't a figure with a big background? Perhaps this young master's identity is even more impressive than Lord Feng Lianqing. Damn it, just a crypt spirit, and it looks so ugly. These big shots are all sick, right? What's the point of snatching such a thing? For a moment, all sorts of voices sounded out. Among them, quite a few were martial artists with some strength. They spoke without scruples too. 400,000 low-grade origin crystals. Zhang Yifeng did not hesitate much and directly shouted. Aoki Lily was slightly taken aback. She did not expect that Zhang Yifeng was still quite resolute. But Feng Lianqing was even more resolute. Emosher gave him the order to obtain the crypt spirit at all costs. If they could not bid for the crypt spirit today and incurred Emosher's displeasure, then it would be terrible. Stinking brat, do you know who this king is? Try to snatch something from this king. Are you tired of living? Feng Lianqing had a fiery temper. He glared at Zhang Yifeng coldly and shouted angrily. Zhang Yifeng, however, had a calm expression and said indifferently, "This is an auction house. Of course, the highest bidder wins. You said that the crypt spirit is yours. Could it be that you think that the Great Yuan Merchant Association is yours as well?" Stinking brat, you. That one sentence caused Feng Lianqing to be speechless. He was instantly speechless, courting death. But the next moment, Feng Lianqing's aura actually increased explosively. Shortly after, an extremely strong pressure blasted towards Zhang Yifeng. Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. No one expected that Feng Lianqing would actually be so overbearing, daring to make a move at the auction house. Nie Tian and Xiu Shan felt that something was wrong. They stood up at the same time and wanted to make a move. Zhang Yifeng was only an alchemist after all. It was impossible for him to endure Feng Lianqing's aura pressure. But the next moment, a change occurred. Aokiki Lily raised her hand slightly. Shortly after, a ray of red light flew out and directly broke through Feng Lianqing's aura pressure. Aokiki Lily frowned slightly and looked at Feng Lianqing rather impatiently. She did not conceal the anger in her heart at all. She said in a cold tone that was rarely seen, "Lord Feng, you openly attacked a distinguished guest of my merchant association at the auction house. Do you think that I'm invisible? Or rather, in Lord Feng's eyes, Great Yuan Merchant Association is very weak and not even worth mentioning. If that's the case, even if you're a lord of the Feng Qin Empire, I won't allow you to behave atrociously here." Aokiki Lily reprimanded coldly. She was no longer as charming as before. Instead, she gave off an unprecedented feeling of suffocation. She did not show any mercy to Feng Lianqing at all. Her attitude was completely condescending. Chapter 213. Aoki Lily saving Zhang Yifeng and reprimanding Feng Lianqing coldly was something that most people did not expect. Lady Lily is usually very charming, but when she shows her might, she's even more powerful than our tigress. That's not true. I heard that Lord Feng Lianqing is already at the 9th level of the giant spirit realm and is just a step away from condensing true essence and stepping into the true essence realm. Lady Lily actually broke through Lord Feng Lianqing's aura. Too abnormal. That's right. I heard that Lady Lily is only 19 this year. As expected of the 10th place on the Merchant Martial Meeting's genius list. While everyone was discussing, they were also amazed by Aoki Lily's strength. Seeing that Zhang Yifeng was fine, Nie Tian heaved a sigh of relief. Just now, when Aoki Lily broke through Feng Lianqing's aura pressure, although it was only for an instant, Nie Tian saw it very clearly. Aoki Lily's attack was extremely fast, and her essence energy attribute was very rare. It seemed to be the light attribute of the 9 elements. The 9 elements were metal, wood, water, fire, earth, wind, lightning, light, and darkness. Among the 9 elements, metal, wood, water, fire, and earth were the most common. The wind and lightning attributes were relatively rare, and the light and darkness attributes were 1 in a million. Aoki Lily was a light attribute essence spirit. No wonder her every move gave off an illusory and infatuated feeling. She must have used some kind of illusion technique. Illusion technique martial skills were known as the most difficult martial skills to learn, even more difficult to cultivate than flying martial skills. And martial artists with light and darkness attribute essence spirits were considered the most suitable to cultivate illusion technique martial skills. Therefore, it was not strange for Aoki Lily to cultivate illusion technique. And when Aoki Lily made her move just now, Nie Tian saw her strength, 5th level of the giant spirit realm. At the age of 19, 5th level of the giant spirit realm. This martial talent was truly monstrous. And Feng Lianqing indeed had the strength of a 9th level of the giant spirit realm. But according to Nie Tian's deduction, if Aoki Lily and Feng Lianqing had a life and death battle, Aoki Lily had a higher chance of winning. Since Aoki Lily was ranked 10th on the Merchant Martial Meeting's genius list, there must be something terrifying about her. Ding Yifan was ranked 10th, but he was ranked behind Aoki Lily. From this, it could be expected that Aoki Lily's battle strength was extraordinary. Aoki Lily, your strength is indeed terrifying, Nietian murmured in his heart. At the same time, he was also interested in meeting the other geniuses on the Merchant Union's genius list. Aoki Lily was only ranked 10th, yet she was already so powerful. The 9 people before her would definitely be even more terrifying. It seems that the 3,000 lesser worlds are quite exciting. Nietian smiled to himself. He was looking forward to it. Amir Nanshan region's genius ranking already had so many formidable figures. Then the genius ranking of the entire 3,000 small worlds would definitely be even more terrifying. Thank you, Lady Hikari. Zhang Yifeng nodded at Aoki Eureka and thanked her sincerely. Aoki Eureka nodded slightly, but her eyes were still locked onto Feng Lianqing. Feng Lianqing was reprimanded by a junior in front of everyone, and even his aura was broken. He immediately felt as if he had been slapped in the face in front of everyone. His old face flushed red, but he did not dare to flare up. Putting aside the fact that this was the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce, even if they were anywhere else, Feng Lianqing would not dare to offend the Aucuba Lily. The Wenqin Empire was a second-rate empire. It was very powerful, but compared to the Diyuan Chamber of Commerce, it was still much weaker. The Diyuan Chamber of Commerce was one of the 7 top chambers of commerce in the Martial Gathering Merchant Union. Its strength was comparable to a first-rate empire. It was not something a small Wenqin empire could compare to. Feng Lianqing's chest heaved up and down. The muscles on his face twitched a few times, and a hint of viciousness flashed across his face. But in the end, he still chose to admit defeat. Lady Hikari, I made a mistake just now. Please don't take offense. Feng Lianqing coughed dryly, cupped his hands, and said with an awkward smile, I hope you made a mistake. A strange look flashed across Aoki Eureka's eyes. She immediately glanced around and regained her coquettish state. She said with a smile, everyone was startled by what happened just now. The auction will continue. It was a false alarm. Everyone heaved a sigh of relief in their hearts. Guti saw everything that happened just now. He frowned and said, why is Feng Lianqing so firm on the Crypt Sprite? Did the Wenqin Empire hear some news? Gu Yi had an ominous premonition. It would not be so easy to bid for the Crypt Sprite this time. A Feng Lianqing and a stinky brat that came out of nowhere. It was really troublesome. At this moment, Zhang Yifeng's body no longer had the remnant flames of the Doomsday Flame. So Gui did not know that he was Nie Tian's disciple. Teacher, what should we do? Shui Linglong said with a worried face. That guy seems to be rich and overbearing. He seems to be even more difficult to deal with than Feng Lianqing. Let's wait and see. Gu Yi was cunning and did not plan to make a move immediately. Feng Lianqing and Zhang Yifeng were in the middle of bidding. If he interfered at this time, it would only make the price soar even faster. This king bids 1 million low-grade essence crystals. In a moment, the price rose very quickly. Feng Lianqing clenched his teeth and shouted. He really did not believe that Zhang Yifeng would fight him to the death for a Crypt Sprite. In the VIP room, Nie Tian slightly frowned. He could already see that Feng Lianqing was determined to win the Crypt Sprite. Debeo, how much money do we have now? Nie Tian turned his head and asked. Boss, what are you trying to do? Jean Debeo cried out in shock and immediately became vigilant. He had just seen Nie Tian squandering, and he really didn't even blink his eyes. Although Jean Debeo was a little unwilling, but Nie Tian's face was full of determination. He still said weakly, the Violet Sun Pellet Cauldron cost 100,000 mid-grade essence crystals, and the Wild World Defying Blade Technique cost 100,000 low-grade essence crystals. We still have 3,900,000 low-grade essence crystals. Nie Tian slightly nodded his head, then raised 3 fingers towards Zhang Yifeng. I bid 1,030,000 low-grade essence crystals. Zhang Yifeng was startled at first, then immediately opened his mouth and said, Nie Tian was completely speechless. So it turned out that Zhang Yifeng was also a stingy person. Nie Tian raised 3 fingers. He was going to bid 3 million low-grade essence crystals. Since there was no result if it went on like this, he might as well scare Feng Lianqing and see if he would be scared away. Nie Tian hurriedly sent a sound transmission to Zhang Yifeng. The latter didn't wait for Aoki Lily to speak and said, "I was wrong just now. I bid 3 million low-grade essence crystals." Gulp. As soon as Zhang Yifeng finished speaking, the expressions of everyone present instantly froze, and in the next moment, countless sounds of saliva being swallowed could be heard. Even Aoki Lily was slightly stunned for a moment. After making sure that Zhang Yifeng's expression was normal, she then said, "This young master bids 3 million low-grade essence crystals." When Aoki Lily was bidding this time, even her usual charming aura was a little weaker, and it was obvious that she was a little nervous. 3 million low-grade essence crystals was not a small amount. Even the royal family of a second-rate empire would have to think about whether or not a crypt elf was worth 3 million low-grade essence crystals. Feng Lianqing was stunned on the spot and couldn't react for a long time. He looked at Zhang Yifeng with a pair of eyes that seemed to be saying, "Are you crazy? 3 million low-grade essence crystals going once, 3 million low-grade essence crystals going twice." At this time, Aoki Lily's voice sounded. Feng Lianqing suddenly felt a gaze that could pierce through his soul. It was actually Mo Shi who was looking at him with a ruthless gaze. 3 million low-grade essence crystals. Aoki Lily continued to bid, but was directly interrupted. "I bid 4 million low-grade essence crystals. I bid 4 million low-grade essence crystals." Chapter 214. Just as Aoki Lily was about to call out the third bid, 2 voices sounded out almost at the same time, and they called out the same price for million low-grade essence crystals. 2 voices. One was Feng Lianqing, the other was Tong Fu. But these 2 people were not the Earth Elf he wanted. They each had their own figures behind them. Behind Feng Lianqing was Mo Shi, behind Tong Fu was Gu Yi. 4 million low-grade essence crystals. Everyone looked at Feng Lianqing, then looked at Tong Fu. Those eyes were clearly looking at 2 lunatics. Earth Elf, no matter how rare, it was also impossible to be worth such a high price. This price was enough to hire a giant spirit realm martial artist to be a guard for several decades. Could it be that the Earth Elf was even more precious than a giant spirit realm martial artist? Even Lin Yifeng frowned slightly at this time. He knew that the Earth Elf was precious and could be used to explore mineral deposits. But this price of 4 million low-grade spirit stones indeed exceeded his expectations too much. Because although the Earth Elf's perception was strong, there were not many precious mineral deposits. Under normal circumstances, even if this Earth Elf searched for ores for his entire life, he also could not find mineral deposits worth 4 million low-grade essence crystals. And in another VIP room, Ding Yifan revealed a fervent expression, stood up agitatedly, and shouted, "As expected." Ding Xiaofeng was very excited too. He did not think that an Earth Elf could be auctioned off at such a sky-high price. This also made him feel very proud because this Earth Elf was escorted by him. But what Ding Yifan and Ding Xiaofeng were excited about was completely different. Although 4 million low-grade essence crystals was a lot, it was not enough to make the great Yuan Chamber of Commerce's young lord lose his composure like this. What Ding Yifan was really excited about was that he confirmed one thing in his heart. He must have discovered a very precious stone mine. One had to admit that Ding Yifan was indeed meticulous. He really guessed correctly. If not for knowing that Heaven Luo Mountain had the existence of Dragon Bloodstone in advance, Gu Yi naturally would not have offered a sky-high price of 4 million low-grade essence crystals. This price, even for a Tier 6 alchemy master like him, it was not a small expense. Zhang Yifeng was stunned, turning back to look at Nie Tian. Nie Tian smiled faintly, indicating that Zhang Yifeng could come back. What Ding Yifan guessed, Nie Tian also guessed. Since so many people wanted the crypt spirits, Nie Tian couldn't afford them with his current wealth. So, he could only give up. However, Nietian already knew that the other person who wanted the crypt spirits was Gu Yi. As soon as Tong Fu came out of the VIP lounge, Nietian sensed his identity. Old Gu, it seems like I was right to look for you. Nietian's lips curled into a smile. He already had a new plan in mind. Since Gui wanted to obtain the crypt spirits, he must know something. If it was really a good thing, it shouldn't be too much for Nietian to go over and get a share of it. When Jean de Bao saw that Nietian had brought Zhang Yifeng back, the stone in his heart was finally lifted. If Nietian continued to bid, Jean de Bao would have to rush back to Blue Cloud City to get the money. On the auction seat, Aoki Eureka frowned. With her intelligence, she naturally guessed that the matter behind this was not simple. But her expression did not change, and the corners of her mouth curled up into a perfect arc. She smiled like a flower and said, "You too, you bid at the same time, and you even bid the same price. This makes this little girl embarrassed." "Little girl, don't be embarrassed." As soon as Aoki Eureka finished speaking, Tong Fu said carelessly, "This lord will increase the price again. I bid 5 million low-grade crystals." Tong Fu said it in a relaxed manner, as if he was buying cabbage in the market. Everyone's eyes focused on him, and soon someone recognized his identity. "Isn't this dwarf the guard of Master Gu?" And yes, there is indeed a dwarf beside Master Gu. It's this guy. It seems that this guy is bidding for Master Gu. No wonder he's so arrogant. As everyone knew, alchemy master was the most profitable profession. Casually refining a few spirit pills could make a lot of money. Not to mention that Gu Yi was a red-clothed elder of the Alchemy Guild, and he himself was a 6th-tier alchemy master. When Feng Lianxing heard the comments below, he was immediately stunned. Of course, he knew that Master Gu was Gu Yi, and he also knew Gu Yi's terrifying identity. If he continued to bid knowing that his competitor was Gu Yi, it would be equivalent to offending the latter. To the Fengqin Empire, a few million low-grade crystals was a small matter, but if he offended the red-clothed elder of the Alchemy Guild, it would be a huge matter. Feng Lianxing's expression changed again and again. After thinking about it, he was prepared to give up. Feng Lianxing continued bidding, but at this moment, Mr. Purple sent a voice transmission over, telling Feng Lianxing to continue bidding. "Mr. Purple, this..." Feng Lianxing revealed a difficult expression. "Forget it." Emosher suddenly stood up and said, "Master." Mr. Purple didn't know why Emosher suddenly wanted to leave and had a puzzled expression. Emosher said, "If we continue to stay here, our identities will be exposed. Since the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone can no longer be kept, why don't we spread the news?" After Emosher finished speaking, he directly walked out of the VIP room. At a certain moment, Emosher's gaze flashed past Aokiki Lily, and a hint of surprise appeared on his face. Mr. Purple and Feng Lianxing immediately followed, and the three of them left in the blink of an eye. Aokiki Lily also noticed Emosher and felt strange. That kid, why does he have such a cold, baleful aura on him? After Feng Lianxing and the others left, Tong Fu shouted with a complacent expression, "Little girl, that whatever king was scared away by me, hurry up and announce the result of the auction." Aokiki Lily smiled, and her numbing voice sounded again. 5 million low-grade crystals going once, 5 million low-grade crystals going twice, 5 million low-grade crystals going thrice sold. As her voice fell, the auction of the underground elf finally came to an end. No one would have thought that the underground elf, with only 3 people bidding, would be sold for a sky-high price of 5 million low-grade crystals. Hi. The underground elf is finally in Ai's hands. In the VIP room, Gu Yi laughed bitterly, but his face revealed a worried expression. Gu Yi wasn't a fool, and he had already faintly guessed that this auction might have been deliberately arranged by Ding Yifan. Him not caring about the price to obtain the underground elf would definitely arouse Ding Yifan's suspicions. "Teacher, the underground elf is ours. Why don't you look good?" Seeing that Gu Yi was in deep thought, Shui Linglong playfully pulled the latter's goatee and giggled. "It's nothing." Gu Yi shook his head slightly, but he sighed in his heart. "I'm afraid that the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone can no longer be kept." Outside the VIP room, Just when Tong Fu was about to return, a figure appeared and shouted, "Ah Fu." Chapter 2:15. Mr. Nya. Nye Tian heard Tong Fu call him differently, and couldn't help but be taken aback. He immediately smiled and said, "Why? Gu forbids you to call me little boy." "Eh, how did you know?" Tong Fu was stunned. Nye Tian smiled faintly and said, "Not only do I know this, but I also know that he threatened you that if you call me little boy again, he won't find a wife for you, right?" Tong Fu didn't have any schemes. Suddenly changing his address. It must be Gu Yi who asked him to do so, and the reason why he was obedient was naturally because Gu Yi tricked him with his wife. "Little boy Nya." "Oh no, Mr. Nya, you are really a god? You actually know everything." This uncle is convinced. Tong Fu laughed loudly, expressing his sincere admiration for Nye Tian. Nye Tian was speechless. He was so smart, such a simple thing. He could figure out what was going on even with his toes. "Mr. Nya, just now this little boy was bidding for you. You also want a crypt dwarf?" Tong Fu saw Zhang Yifeng behind Nye Tian and had a face of astonishment. "Crypt dwarf?" Nye Tian was slightly taken aback and immediately understood. It must be that Tong Fu thought the crypt elf looked too good, so it could only be a dwarf, not an elf. "Mr. Nya, my big brother is in the room. I'll take you to see him," Tong Fu said, and was about to turn back, but was stopped by Nye Tian. "I won't see Gu for the time being. Tell him that I will go to Danwu City Alchemist Guild to find him tomorrow." Nye Tian smiled faintly and immediately turned to leave. He really wanted to know what Gui was doing, but now was not the best time. Nye Tian didn't want too many people to see him and Gu Yi together, so it was better to keep a certain distance between them. This way, Ding Yifun, who thought he was smart, would have more suspicions. Tong Fu, of course, didn't stop Nye Tian, but returned to the VIP room happily. "What did you say?" Nye Tian came to Danwu City. Gu Yi had been immersed in excitement and worry all this while, and did not notice that Nye Tian had left right under his nose and had a face of shock. Tong Fu nodded and said, "Mr. Nye came out from the VIP room next to ours. When we were bidding for the Crypt Sprite just now, it was the person next to him who bid." "Nye Tian also wants the Cave Elves?" Gu Yi was even more shocked, his goatee beginning to tremble. But he immediately understood something and thought to himself, "My white flame forked tongue can sense the existence of the Dragon Bloodstone, and the red flame forked tongue that Nye Tian swallowed should also be able to sense the secret of the Dragon Bloodstone. Since he knows about the Dragon Bloodstone, then it's not surprising that he bid for the Crypt Spirits." Gu Yi's reasoning was very logical, but unfortunately, Nye Tian did not know of the existence of the Dragon Bloodstone. Although Nye Tian had swallowed Qi Hua's Lai Xingzi, he had not merged with it. What's more, the 9 Extreme Chaos Beast Heaven-Devouring Soul was too strong. In just half a month, Qi Hua's aura had been completely swallowed. Therefore, Nye Tian did not know about the Dragon Bloodstone at all. But there was also an advantage to Nye Tian, and that was that Mo Shi could not sense his existence. There was no demonic fire aura in his body. Even if Mo Shi was the original body of the Doomsday Flame, he could not sense Nye Tian's existence. Gu Yi was in trouble. Mo Shi could sense his existence at any time, anywhere. As long as the two of them were within 500 kilometers, the demonic fire aura in his body would be very obvious to Mo Shi. But Gu Yi could not sense Mo Shi's existence. After all, the White Flame Forked Tongue was only a clone of Mo Shi. Damn, did that Nye brat take down Heaven Luo City? Gu Yi suddenly thought of something that Nye Tian had said before. "Heaven Luo City, I want it." This was what Nye Tian had said before. Now that he thought of it, Gu Yi suddenly felt a chill run down his spine. Big beads of sweat appeared on his forehead as he muttered, "Did that brat already know that Heaven Luo Mountain has the Dragon Bloodstone?" Thinking of this, Gu Yi suddenly felt that Nye Tian was simply unfathomable. If Nye Tian really knew that there was a Dragon Bloodstone on Heaven Luo Mountain a long time ago, and even planned to take down Heaven Luo City in advance, then this kind of thinking was really too terrifying. Unfortunately, Nye Tian did not know anything. He just happened to stumble upon a big bargain. "Teacher, who is this Nye Tian you were talking about?" How come I have never heard of this person? Shui Linglong frowned, her delicate face revealing a puzzled expression. She saw that Gu Yi was so shocked at the mention of Nie Tian's name, and that even Tong Fu addressed Nie Tian as Mr. Nie. She could not help but become interested in this person. Nothing, just an old friend. Gu Yi was still immersed in shock as he spoke. Teacher's old friend. Shui Linglong raised her snow-white chin, muttered slightly, and muttered, "Is he an alchemy grandmaster?" "What alchemy grandmaster? That Niet brat is just a little baby. He is only a few days older than you," Tong Fu said carelessly. Shui Linglong's delicate face stiffened for a moment, her face filled with astonishment. She originally thought that Nie Tian would definitely be an alchemy grandmaster, at least on the same level as Gu Yi. Who would have thought that the latter was actually a youth who was about the same age as her? "Then Ah Fu, why did you call him Mr. Nie?" Shui Linglong asked in a seemingly blaming tone. Tong Fu helplessly glanced at Gu Yi and said, "It's all because Big Brother told me to call him that, otherwise I would not call a little baby what Mr." At this time, Gu Yi calmed down a lot. He fiercely glared at Tong Fu and said, "Ah Fu, have you forgotten what I said? You're not allowed to call Nie Tian little baby again." "All right, I won't call him that. In the future, I will just call him Mr. Nie, all right?" Tong Fu was helpless and could only say in distress. Gu Yi thought of his previous guess, and in his heart, his evaluation of Nie Tian rose by a lot, feeling that Nie Tian was an unreachable character. He really did not expect that a teenager. How could he be so terrifying? To think that he was a dignified 6th-ranked alchemist, a red-clothed elder of the Alchemist Association. He painstakingly planned for the Devil Fire for decades, but in the end, Nie Tian interfered and directly obtained a scarlet flame, which was even more powerful than his white flame. And he had just found out that Tian Luo Mountain had dragon bloodstone, and in the end, Nie Tian had already grasped Tian Luo Mountain in his hands. All of these really made Gu Yi puzzled, but in his heart, he was firm on a thought. Nie Tian, this person, can only be friends, not enemies. "Teacher, is this Nie Tian really very powerful?" Shui Linglong was somewhat unhappy and asked with a frown. "Very powerful." Gu Yi nodded seriously. Shui Linglong was somewhat disappointed. She was also a genius in the alchemy Dao, and she was very arrogant in her heart. Hearing her teacher praising a youth who was about the same age as her, she naturally would not be happy. Gu Yi could see what Shui Linglong was thinking in her heart, and said with a bitter smile, "Linglong girl, Master knows that you have the mentality of comparing and are not willing to admit defeat, but compared to Nie Tian, you can only find trouble for yourself. The disciple beside you is only 20 years old and is already a 3rd-ranked alchemist. Don't you think he is powerful?" Chapter 2:16. Once again, the name Gu Qiulong was mentioned. Gu Qiulong, one of the 3 monstrous geniuses of Su Mi Ling City, a peerless alchemy genius on par with MOU. At the age of 20, his spiritual power had reached a terrifying 45th rank, 100% 4th-ranked alchemist. Spiritual power, this was the most direct and effective indicator to evaluate an alchemist. Generally speaking, the spiritual power of an ordinary martial artist was between the 10th and 20th rank. Even if it increased with the increase in strength, it would not increase by much. For ordinary people, if their spiritual power could reach the 15th rank before the age of 20, it meant that they could become an alchemist. Reaching the 20th rank, they were geniuses. Reaching the 25th rank, they were geniuses among geniuses. Reaching the 30th rank, this kind of character was 1 in 10,000. And Gu Qiulong cultivated his spiritual power to the 45th rank at the age of 20. His abnormal talent in the alchemy Dao could be seen at a glance. Even Nie Tian, after his rebirth, his current spiritual power was only at the 42nd rank. One had to know that after his rebirth, his spiritual power was directly at the 40th rank. After such a long time, his strength had improved a lot, but his spiritual power had only advanced by 2 ranks. From this, it could be seen how difficult it was to improve one's spiritual power. Shui Linglong was only 14 years old, but her spiritual power had already reached the 29th rank. This kind of talent could be regarded as amazing, But compared to a true monstrous genius like Gu Qiulong, she was still a notch worse. Therefore, Shui Linglong had always regarded Gu Qiulong as her goal. But now, a Niet Tian suddenly appeared, seemingly stronger than Gu Qiulong, which made her somewhat unable to accept it. Gu Yi naturally knew what Shui Linglong was thinking, but he faintly smiled and said, "Linglong girl, Master feels that Niet Tian is someone who can stand shoulder to shoulder with the red-clothed elders of the Alchemist Association. Do you think he is even more abnormal than Gu Qiulong?" "Ah!" Shui Linglong screamed, her small mouth open wide, shocked to the extreme. Her mood fluctuated violently. It was really too exciting. The red-clothed elders, they were all sixth-ranked alchemists. If Niet Tian was comparable to the red-clothed elders, didn't that mean that he was a sixth-ranked alchemist? How is this possible? It was impossible for a teenager to become a sixth-ranked alchemist. Gu Yi's evaluation of Niet Tian was not because he was a sixth-tier alchemist, but in terms of comprehensive aspects, Niet Tian was able to stand shoulder to shoulder with him. That was why Gu Yi would sometimes call him Brother Nye. If that wasn't the case, he wouldn't have lowered himself to call him brother. "Little girl, the world is so big that you can't imagine it. Above the 3,000 small worlds, there's a higher world. Maybe Niet Tian came from a higher world, so you don't have to be depressed. As long as one perseveres in the path of alchemy, one will naturally be able to reap some benefits." For the sake of not giving too much of a blow to his little disciple, Gu Yi sighed and said. He definitely didn't expect that a casual sigh would actually make him guess correctly. Niet Tian came from the upper realm of the 3,000 small worlds, the heavenly realm's god domain. Just as Gu Yi was sighing, Niet Tian and the others had already obtained the Violet Sun Pill Cauldron and the Violent World-defying saber technique, and left the Yuan Chamber of Commerce. Walking on the streets of Danwu City, the corner of Niet Tian's mouth curled up strangely as he said in his heart, "Gong Sheng, you really don't want to give up. Since you delivered yourself to me, then don't blame me." When Niet Tian just walked out of the Yuan Chamber of Commerce, he already sensed that someone was following him. And this person was none other than the seventh prince of the Sun Chu Empire, Gong Sheng, who had ulterior motives towards Tang Yuyu. "Mister, someone is following us." Qiu Shan also sensed that there was someone behind him and transmitted his voice to warn Niet Tian. Niet Tian smiled and transmitted his voice, "It's Gong Sheng. He has 2 dark guards with him, and they're both at the first level of the giant spirit realm. You will deal with them later." Qiu Shan agreed, his expression unchanging. Gong Sheng, the prince of the Sun Chu Empire, had dark guards protecting him. Previously at the Yuan Chamber of Commerce, because Gong Sheng was not in any danger, the 2 dark guards did not appear. But Niet Tian had long sensed their existence. "Niet Tian, that person is following us." At this moment, Tang Yuyu said loudly. Although Tang Yuyu had lost her memory, her strength was still there. Moreover, her long-cultivated sensitivity towards killing intent was still there. She similarly discovered that Gong Sheng and the others were following them. "Don't speak." Niet Tian was speechless and hurriedly reminded Tang Yuyu to keep quiet. Even if she discovered that someone was following them, she couldn't shout it out so brazenly. Indeed, people who lost their memories couldn't afford to be hurt. "Oh." Tang Yu nodded her little head and no longer spoke. About 100 meters away from Niet Tian, Gong Sheng and the others were quietly following them. "Young Master Sheng, that woman seems to have discovered us," one of them said. "So what if they discovered us? As long as they dare to leave the Danwu city, this young master will kill them all the same. As for that little beauty, I will definitely battle it out with her for 300 rounds." Gong Sheng's face was filled with disdain, not putting Niet Tian in his eyes at all. The Danwu city was the territory of the Alchemist Guild. Gong Sheng didn't dare to act rashly, but as long as they left the Danwu city, he would have nothing to fear. Coincidentally, Niet Tian had the same plan in his heart. After a while, Niet Tian and the others walked out of the Danwu city. After passing through 2 city gates, they arrived at Heaven Luo City. Heaven Luo City, this was Niet Tian's own city. As soon as they entered Heaven Luo City, Niet Tian signaled to Qiu Shan. The latter understood and disappeared in a flash. Nietian slowed down his footsteps. When Gong Sheng and the others entered the city, he suddenly shouted, "Gao Han, close the city gates." The person guarding the city gates at this time was Heaven Luo City's deputy commander, Gao Han. Gao Han had long noticed Nietian and Gong Sheng and the others behind him. He didn't hesitate at all and directly ordered the guards on both sides to close the city gates. Heaven Luo City's city gates were more than 40 meters high, 3 meters thick, and 9 meters deep. Even a true element realm martial artist might not be able to break through. Only now did Gong Sheng notice something. His expression changed slightly, but he wasn't afraid. "Gong Sheng, since you're here, let this city lord entertain you well." Nietian smiled faintly and said loudly. After saying that, Nietian signaled Zhang Yifeng and the others to step back. "Stinking brat, are you waiting for this young master to appear?" Gong Sheng chuckled. A wretched look flashed across Tang Yuyu's body. Even at this time, he was still thinking of something good. Nietian couldn't help but laugh. Gong Sheng was simply too stupid. He had no idea what was going on. "Young Master Sheng, something doesn't seem right." At this time, Gao Han appeared with a group of guards and surrounded Gong Sheng and the others. The guy whose ear was cut off by Nietian said in horror. Gong Sheng didn't care at all. He said loudly, "This is Heaven Luo City, just a small city in a third-rate empire. This young master is a prince of the Sun Chu Empire. Who dares to do anything to me? If something happens to this young master, not only will Heaven Luo City be in trouble, even the Blue Cloud Empire will be in danger." "Is that so?" Nietian smiled playfully. He looked at Gong Sheng sympathetically, as if he was looking at a mentally retarded child. Originally, Nietian thought that Feng Wu Ke of the Wenqin Empire was stupid enough. He didn't expect Gong Sheng to be even more stupid. He was simply breaking the bottom line of stupidity. These princes of the empire always put on airs like princes. They relied on their status to act arrogant. But in fact, they were all cowards.